So let's dive into the Copilot stack. So Satya already showed this, and we're going to blow it up a little bit now. So this is how our Copilots at Microsoft are structured, and these are some of the things that we're going to be diving into greater detail in subsequent talks for you all to have a look at, to pick up, to use, to learn about, and to make things. Some of this may look familiar. So there are 3 boxes. You can think of these as roughly corresponding to the 3 tiers of a normal application. So you've got a front end, you've got a mid-tier, you've got a back end. So the front end, the things that we've already talked about, is you start with understanding what your amazing product idea is. The thing that's a little bit different about the user experience design with Copilots is we have more or less been building user experiences the same way for 180 plus years since Ada Lovelace wrote the first program. We have had to understand what the machine is capable of, and then we are fiddling around with how we express the connection between the human and the machine, in very explicit ways. So what that means for you all is fiddling around with user interface elements, menus, binding code to actions, trying to fully anticipate the needs of the user and architecting your applications in a particular and familiar way so that people know how to get at all the functionality, the capability that you really built into your code. The thing that's a little bit different in a Copilot is you're going to spend less time thinking about what your user interface widgets are and trying to second guess the user about what it is they want, because they have this really natural mechanism to express what it is they want, natural language. And so what you have to think about in the design of these Copilots is what it is you want the Copilot to actually be capable of. So what are the things the model can't do that you need to augment with a bunch of the stuff that I'm about to show you in the orchestration layer with plugins and maybe even with fine-tuning models or using a portfolio of models to accomplish. But it's going to be way less of that fiddling around mapping user interface elements to little chunks of code than you're accustomed to. And you also, on the flip side of that, have to think about what you want the Copilot not to do. And so this is important in how you're thinking about safety, but also because the thing at the bottom of the stack, these foundation models are sort of a big bucket of unrestrained capability. You're the one who oftentimes has to restrain it to your particular domain. For instance, with GitHub Copilot, a bunch of the work that we did is to keep the model on task, which is helping you solve your development problems. You're not trying to figure out what the best menu item is on Taco Bell when you're sitting in GitHub Copilot trying to write a piece of code. So that's the user interface, just broad brush, what is different there. So now let's talk about orchestration. So orchestration is the business logic of your Copilot. And as I mentioned, when we started building our own Copilots, every team inside of the company was building their own orchestration layer. So all of that logic to figure out how to get a thing to sequence through all of the models, do all of the filtering, do all of the prompt augmentation that you have to do to build a really great app. And we just sort of noticed that there was commonality across all of those things. So one of the things that we did that greatly affected our ability to get these Copilots out to market at scale and to do more ambitious things was to decide that inside of Microsoft, we are going to have one orchestration mechanism that we will use to help build our apps. That is called Semantic Kernel, which we've open sourced, and there's a session on Semantic Kernel later at Build, which I would encourage you all to attend. But we also know that we're not the only ones who've seen that there's all of this commonality across orchestration. And there's some really great open source orchestration tools that work super well inside of the Azure ecosystem that we're building. So Harrison from LangChain, shout out to Harrison, is here with us in the front row. Yeah, give Harrison a round of applause, please. So LangChain is one of the most popular open source orchestration mechanisms, and Harrison, with a very small team, has built a thing that is useful to an extraordinary number of developers. So, and orchestration isn't a solved problem. We're going to see a lot of new ideas there, and the thing that I want to assure everyone here in the room is that you'll be able to use whatever orchestration mechanism you want. Like we'll give you some options that we think are great for us, like we'll point you to some of our open source favorites, but if you want to roll your own thing, like that's your choice. Like I'm a developer, I like rolling my own stuff sometimes too. One of the things that you'll see in Scott Guthrie's talk that's coming up next is prompt flow, which is another orchestration mechanism that actually unifies LangChain and semantic kernel. And so like I encourage you all to go dive a little bit deeper there. So inside of the orchestration layer, the fundamental thing that you're going to be manipulating is a prompt. And so a prompt is just a bucket of tokens that is generated by the user experience layer of your application. It could be, you know, in something like Bing Chat or ChatGPT, like a question or like a thing that a user is asking the model to do. Or it could be something that your application constructs, like where it's not a direct natural language thing from the user, but a natural language thing that you are conveying to the model from your application. And a big part of handling those prompts at the beginning stages of orchestration is prompt and response filtering. So basically saying, I'm not going to allow these prompts through because maybe they will cause the model to respond in a way that doesn't meet the needs of your application or do something unsafe. And you also filter responses on the way back up. So after the model has produced a response to the prompt, like you may decide that you want to filter some or all of the prompt out. Like a natural thing to, where this happens is with the safety infrastructure that you're going to see Sarah Bird talk about in her talk later. But like there are other reasons that you may want to do some filtering on the responses. You also have this unit of prompt code called the meta prompt. And the meta prompt is the standing set of instructions that you give to your copilot that get passed down to the model on every turn of conversation that tells it how to accommodate itself to the copilot that you're trying to build. It's where a bunch of your safety tuning is going to happen. It's where you sort of tell the model like what personality you want it to have. So like for instance, we use the meta prompt to do things like telling Bing Chat to be more balanced versus more precise. It is also like how you sort of teach the model new capabilities. So like you can even think of meta prompt design as a form of fine tuning. And so it's just far easier to do things in the meta prompt than to like have to go down to the lower layers of the infrastructure and start rolling your own things. Once you get past the meta prompt and the prompt filtering stages, like you start to think about grounding. And grounding is all about adding additional context to the prompt that may be useful for helping the model respond to the prompt that's flowing down. So in the case of Bing Chat, which I think is the first place that was really doing retrieval augmented generation before retrieval augmented generation had a name, we basically look at the prompt, the user query, and issue a query to the search index to find relevant documents for the prompt. We add those documents to the prompt and send it to the model so that it has that extra context to provide a good answer. Increasingly, people are using vector databases to do retrieval augmented generation. So like you may take the prompt, compute a set of embeddings for them, and then do a lookup in a vector database that is indexed by those embeddings to get relevant documents for the prompt and give that extra context for the model to give you a better answer. But you may also augment the prompt and do grounding with arbitrary web APIs, and like you can even think about using plugins for doing grounding. And so the next step here is like this is where plugin execution happens. So at this stage, like again, what I just mentioned in grounding, like you may use the plugin to add some extra context to the prompt before it goes down to the model, or you may execute something, do a plugin execution on the way back up from the model so that you can take an action on a system. So once you get through like all of the stuff in the orchestration layer, and I should say like also, you may be doing multiple turns through this whole system. So like calling multiple models, like making multiple passes through this whole pipeline in order to like get what you need from the system. But at the very bottom of the stack are foundation models and infrastructure. And we give you a bunch of choices for how to use foundation models in this Copilot platform on Azure and on Windows. So you can choose to use one of the hosted foundation models like the ChatGPT model or the GPT-4 model that are now available on the Azure OpenAI API service. You can fine-tune one of these hosted foundation models. The ChatGPT 3.5 fine-tuning APIs are live now, and you'll be able to fine-tune GPT-4 soon. But if neither of those options work for you, like you have sort of exhausted all of the things that you can do in the orchestration layer to get your Copilot to do what you need, and neither of these things will work for you, like you can't wholly solve your problem with a hosted API because of whatever reason, you can't use the fine-tuning APIs to accomplish what you want to accomplish, you can bring your own model. And like we are incredibly excited about what's happening in the open source community right now. Like there's a bunch of brilliant work happening with open source models. And one of the things that you will see in the next talk is we have the Azure AI catalog, model catalog, that is going to be a place you can go inside of Azure to find the most popular models on Hugging Face and in GitHub, where you'll be able to push button, provision, and deploy those models to Azure to use in your Copilots. And also, like, you can train your own model from scratch, like as we mentioned several times, like from the most ambitious models in the world, the ones that OpenAI are training, all the way down to like smaller things, like Azure AI supercomputing infrastructure and our environment give you a great way to train your model from scratch if that's what you need to do. So this is the Copilot stack, top to bottom. And what I want to do now is make this maybe a little bit less abstract by talking about a Copilot that I wrote. So I host a podcast called Behind the Tech. And every month when the podcast airs, my team comes and bugs me to write a social media post to advertise the podcast. And I suck at this. Like I forget to read my emails, like they have to bug me over and over again, and like they really want a Kevin social media Copilot so they don't have to go through the irritation of dealing with me. And so, I had the honor recently of interviewing Neil deGrasse Tyson on the podcast, and so like I'm just gonna walk you through this Copilot that we built, that we actually just ran, and it did the social media post for the Neil deGrasse Tyson podcast that just went live. So here's what it looks like. So just end-to-end picture, like the Copilot runs on a Windows PC. It uses a mixture of open source models and hosted models. It does retrieval augmented generation, and it calls a plugin to finish doing its work. So let's walk through these step by step. So the first step of this process is we have an audio file and we need a transcript. So on our Windows PC, we take the OpenAI open source Whisper model and run the audio through the model to get a transcript. Does a really amazing job. So once we have the transcript, like the next stage in the orchestration is we have the Databricks DALL-E 2.0 12 billion parameter large language model running on our Windows PC, and we ask it some things about the transcript, like for instance, who was the guest this episode? Like, because again, we want to do this like lights out, like not have to have Kevin answering a bunch of questions because he's slow and annoying. So the next thing we do once we have the transcript and we have all of this information that we've extracted from the transcript, like we want to send a chunk of that to the Bing API, or like we want to send Neil's name to the Bing API to get a bio. And then we're going to combine all of this stuff together into a single packet of information, like a big prompt that has some stuff about the transcript, and some stuff about Neil, and we get our social media blurb. Like this is a pretty good blurb, so we're gonna go to the next step here, which is like we need a thumbnail. So we call our hosted OpenAI API to get an image from the DALL-E model. This looks pretty good, it's cosmic, it's sort of podcasty, like plenty good enough for this post. And so the last step is we want to invoke a plugin for LinkedIn that will take the thumbnail and the post and the link to the podcast and just post it to my LinkedIn feed. One of the super important things about this is we are, before we take an action on the user's behalf, we want to present to them like what it is that's going to happen. Because if for some reason or another the model went haywire and produced something that we didn't want to post, like once I hit yes, this is going to 800,000 people on LinkedIn. So we review, we click yes, and we post. So, and this is the live post that's like on LinkedIn right now. You should go check out this episode with Neil. It's awesome. So this is really just a illustration for you all. Like, I'm not claiming that this is the most interesting Copilot in the world, but it was really pretty easy to do. So we posted all of the code on the GitHub repo. Like, I encourage all of you to check it out. Like, it's a good template for thinking about how to build your first Copilot. So the thing that we want to talk about last before we jump in to Scott's keynote is AI safety. So it's the first thing that we think about when we're building Copilots, and we think about it at every step of the process. You're going to hear a ton about this great AI safety work from my colleague Sarah Boyd, who runs our responsible AI infrastructure team inside of the AI platform group. It's really, really super good stuff. Like, we're giving you all some amazing tools to go build really safe, responsible AI applications. Just very quickly, like, I want to mention one of the things that you're hearing here. First, Satya mentioned it, is we're giving you a bunch of like amazing media provenance tools that will help users understand when they're seeing generated content or not. Like, we're going to be watermarking all of the content that we are producing, and we're giving you tools where if your AI applications, your Copilots are generating synthetic content, you'll be able to call our APIs and add these cryptographic provenance watermarks to your tools. It's super, super exciting stuff. So, Copilots. You have heard from us that we have this amazing new software development pattern. You have heard about how we think about architecting Copilots. And you have heard our enthusiasm that, like, not only are there going to be a bunch of Copilots from Microsoft and from our partners, but like, we really think that you all are going to be the ones who build the most interesting Copilots in the world. It's just like any other major platform. Like, the thing that makes your PC great, the thing that makes the internet great, the thing that makes a smartphone great aren't the things that launch when those platforms launch. It's what you all will create on top of them. So I want to share one anecdote before we go. I was an intern at Microsoft Research in 2001. I came to MSR with my PhD advisor when he went on sabbatical. And we would go out with our research group every Thursday to this burrito joint in Bellevue that I think is closed now, called Acapulco Fresh. And occasionally this gentleman would join us. His name is Murray Sargent. And Murray, like, I was a 30-year-old PhD student, seemed like a legend to me, because Murray was the guy who had broken the 64K limit on the Intel microprocessors. So, like, many of you may be too young to even remember this, but at one point in time, like, the computers that we shipped could only use 64 kilobytes of memory for doing the work that they had to do. And Murray was the guy, when the 286 came out, that figured out protected mode and got Microsoft software to work beyond that 64K memory barrier. And it's, like, unbelievable to sort of think about what impact, like, small things like that had on the trajectory of the industry. So, you know, I was in awe of Murray, and I wondered every time we had lunch with him, what am I ever going to do in my career that would allow someone like me, like a younger version of myself, to look at me and think, wow, like, this guy did some legendary stuff. And so this is the moment for all of us now. We have capabilities in our hands with these new tools in the early days of this new platform to absolutely do amazing things, where literally the challenge for you all is to go do some legendary shit that someone will be in awe of you for one day. And so with that, I would like to bring to stage my colleague, Executive Vice President of Cloud and AI, the legend himself, Scott Guthrie.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is great to be back here at Build. I'm really looking forward to spending the week with you. You know, as Kevin and Satya have talked about today, you know, AI is going to profoundly change how we work and how every organization operates. And every existing app is going to be reinvented with AI. And we're going to see new apps be built with AI that weren't possible before. And Kevin just walked us through the Copilot stack and explained the different layers involved in building solutions that take deep advantage of large AI models. I'm going to build on his talk and walk you through how we're going to make it easy to develop these AI solutions using Azure, GitHub, and Visual Studio. We're going to show a lot of code today in my talk and introduce you along the way to some amazing new capabilities that we're announcing and releasing here at Build. Let's start by talking about Visual Studio and GitHub. You know, the Visual Studio family of products, which includes both Visual Studio as well as Visual Studio Code, are now the most widely used development tools in the entire world across all languages and platforms. And GitHub is used by over 100 million developers and is literally the home of open source. GitHub also now provides developers and enterprises with an integrated end-to-end developer platform that can be used to collaborate, automate, and secure DevOps solutions. And with GitHub, you can build amazing AI solutions, including all the Copilot capabilities that Kevin just talked about, and use it to transform your businesses. Now, one of the most exciting new capabilities that we've launched with GitHub is a new service we call GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot was the first solution that we built using the new transformational large AI models developed by OpenAI. And Copilot provides an AI pair programmer that works with all popular programming languages and dramatically accelerates your productivity. This spring, we announced a new update for GitHub Copilot that we call Copilot X. And Copilot X further enhances Copilot using the latest GPT-4 models and provides immersive Copilot chat functionality, Copilot for pull requests, and automatic unit test generation scenarios. It's truly amazing. And what I'd like to do is invite Thomas Dohmke, the CEO of GitHub, on stage to show it off in action. Please welcome Thomas.
Good to see you, Bill.
Good to see you.
Hello, Build. It's so great to be here in person. I'm Thomas, and I'm a developer. And what we have witnessed this past year with GitHub Copilot has been a step change to developer productivity. Software has eaten the world. Now it's AI's turn. But the autocomplete pair programmer has always been just the starting point. We swing the doors wide open to a new age when natural language powers the coding experience. And that begins with GitHub Copilot Chat, a key feature for GitHub Copilot X. So let's see some real code. For this demo scenario here, I've inherited some Python code from a coworker. It's pretty purely documented. We've all been there, right? With GitHub Copilot, I can simply write code by accepting code suggestions. So here's a little unit test, and I can just press the tab key a couple of times, and I've written a full unit test in 7 lines of code with no learning the code and whatnot. But what I can do with Copilot is to provide additional context. I can't tell Copilot what I want, well, until now. Because now we have Copilot Chat. It sits right here in Visual Studio Code. It suggests tasks based on natural language, and I can interact with it down here to both learn and build while I'm coding. So I have another file here. It's called unknown.py, and it has these 3 cryptic regular expressions. I have no idea what those are doing. Let's see if Copilot can explain them to us. OK, Copilot is rendering my response. And you can see here the first regular expression is validating email addresses. The second one is validating phone numbers. And the third one is validating strong passwords. Makes sense, I guess. So let's highlight this and make this code a bit more readable. Make this code more readable. And Copilot analyzes my code. You can see here, now my regular expressions get nice names. I get nice comments. It looks much better. But I think we can do even a little bit better to make the next person that takes this code understand it even more. So let's say we want to separate out the validation functions and add more comments. Okay, here's even better code. My regular expressions still have their good names, and I get 3 new methods, to validate email, phone number, and password. I think that's much better. So I can just scroll up here and take this code over, and now I have a much better documented file that I can pass on to the next coworker. Okay, I got a 3rd file, and this seems to be passing expenses. I got a 3rd file, and this one seems to be passing expenses. Let's see if this actually works. Ooh, I got an error. It can't unpack the values. So let's see if Copilot can fix the bugs in my code. And so it says, there's a couple of issues. It seems like the split method is splitting the values as a comma separator, but in my comment here, I had said I want the space separator. And then it also says, the date-time module is not imported, probably because I only highlighted the method. So if you look at here, the fix is in split. My fix here in split is here, so I can just go, of course, here. I'm still the pilot and fix this one method. And now my code runs. Cool. So while we're here, I can also ask Copilot to generate some unit tests for me, and I can do this with what we call / commands. So instead of typing, all this stuff on stage, I can just type tests. And now Copilot analyzes all the code paths in my code. It looks at the comment, and you can see it here generating multiple unit tests for my class. In fact, there's one for invalid dates, one for invalid values, command lines, single lines, empty string. It does all that boilerplate code for me, all that boilerplate work for me that I don't want to do. And now I can take this, click this little 3 dot here, and insert this into a new file, and have a new unit test file. And I can, of course, now use Copilot and Copilot Chat to build this out even more. Well, thank you, Copilot, for doing all the work for me. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, when can I get my hands on all this? And we want to bring this whole experience, all of Copilot X, as broadly as we can and as soon as possible, but right now we have quite the wait list. Well, don't worry, I have an Oprah moment for you. You get a free Copilot Chat, you get a free Copilot Chat. Everybody here right at Build in the audience gets early access to Copilot Chat today. Use Copilot and Copilot Chat both in Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. And thank you so much for being here today. Back to you, Scott.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks, Thomas. We're really excited to see what everyone here is able to do with GitHub Copilot. As you just saw, Copilot dramatically accelerates developer productivity. In fact, 46% of all lines of code written by developers that are using GitHub Copilot are now fully AI generated. 75% of developers using Copilot are feeling that they can now focus on more satisfying work. No one really loves debugging regular expressions, and you can now enjoy your jobs more. And 96% of developers report being able to complete repetitive tasks a lot faster. And we now have over 1 million developers using GitHub Copilot around the world today. And again, we're excited to have everyone here in the live audience be able to take advantage of the latest GitHub Copilot Chat capability starting this week. Now, we've seen with Visual Studio, we've seen GitHub Copilot and Visual Studio in action. Let's now look at how we can use these incredibly powerful tools to start building AI plugins. And as you heard from Satya and Kevin, we're embracing an open plugin standard that provides plugin interoperability across ChatGPT and all of the Microsoft Copilot offerings. And with GitHub and Visual Studio, we have an incredibly streamlined developer experience for building these AI plugins. Let's watch a demo that shows all this off.
Plugins enable developers to integrate custom applications and data into the chat experience for users. Let's say we have an e-retail store that sells outdoor equipment. When a user asks a question about outdoor products within ChatGPT, we might want to provide them with a list of related products that are available. Now let me show you how easy it is to create a plugin using Visual Studio Code and GitHub. I could fork and clone the repo on my local machine, but instead I'm going to use GitHub Codespaces. Codespaces are GitHub's one-click developer environment in the cloud. They're fully configured to your repo, and they're free for up to 60 hours a month, which makes it a great fit for open source contributions, exploring new stacks, or working across multiple devices. Now let's crack it open and see what's inside. The code for this sample plugin actually looks pretty simple. It uses Fast API, a Python web framework, to expose some REST API endpoints that are called by ChatGPT. For this demo, our plugin is just going to return product information when users ask about them in the chat. I'll start by just loading some fake products from the products.json file. So I'm pretty new to Python, and I just love how Copilot helps me as a pair programmer. I'm able to stay in the zone and just focus on the big picture. Once we're done with our API, all we need to do to transform this project into a plugin is add a little bit of metadata. Well-known AI plugin.json has a description of what the plugin does and includes things like a logo that will be shown in the response. The same file can be used to create plugins for ChatGPT, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and Bing Chat. Now let's add a breakpoint to our API. Once the plugin gets called, I can observe the flow from the request and the response. One of the great benefits of Codespaces is that I don't have to do anything special to install the dependencies. I can run and debug the project, and everything just works. When our project starts, we can see that Codespaces has opened the ports for our Fast API server. This is really helpful for debugging web apps and APIs. By default, the endpoints for our Codespace are only accessible to me. They're secure by default. But I can also configure them to be accessible by my team or my organization, or I can choose to make them public. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to make our Fast API port public so that ChatGPT can call it. Once I have the URL copied, I'm going to create a new chat in ChatGPT and then install the plugin via the plugin store. This is really simple. All we specify is the URL to our Codespace, and ChatGPT will take care of the rest. Now that our plugin is installed, we can start experimenting with the code inside the chat. To check it all out, all I need to do is start asking questions that might match the natural language instructions we gave in the metadata we exposed for our plugin. In this case, it was climbing products. Because our plugin is running inside a Codespace, we can even interactively debug it as well. As you can see, our breakpoint is being hit inside VS Code as soon as our plugin is invoked. We can step through the code, inspect variables, and really determine if there's any issues with the way that our code is behaving based on what's being sent by ChatGPT. The experience for building a ChatGPT plugin inside VS Code and GitHub Codespaces is incredibly productive. It's a lot like building a web app. The experience we showed here was for building a ChatGPT plugin, but the experience for building a plugin from Microsoft 365 Copilot and Bing Chat is exactly the same. Now let me show you the same plugin we just built running inside Bing Chat. Microsoft 365 Copilot also supports the same plugin, and you'll hear more about that tomorrow.
Plugins are an incredibly powerful way to connect your apps and data to AI. And you just saw how we can use GitHub Codespaces to really deliver an amazing development environment, and Copilot to help you code and actually build it. And as Satya announced this morning, we now have one plugin model extensibility across, again, OpenAI's ChatGPT service, as well as all of our Microsoft Copilot experiences. And tomorrow morning, you'll hear from Rajesh and Panos, who will share more about Teams and Windows and how you can use the exact same extensibility model to build great experiences within them as well. And you can use this extensibility model to enable plugins within Copilot experiences you build within your own apps as well. And a little bit later on in this keynote, I'm going to talk about how you build your own Copilot experiences using our Azure set of services. Now, in that last demo, we used GitHub Codespaces to both code the plugin, but also to kind of do a simple test of it within ChatGPT. And because Codespaces is running in the cloud, it was really easy for ChatGPT to connect to it, and you have a nice interactive debugging experience as part of it. This works really well for getting started and for simple development scenarios. But once you go into production, and as your AI plugin gets a little bit more sophisticated, you're going to want to be able to have a backend that's going to be able to scale it out. And there, you're going to need an elastic cloud. And Azure provides a great set of cloud-native services, including powerful Kubernetes, as well as container-based solutions that you can leverage to do this. And with our GitHub Actions capability inside GitHub, you can easily set up now a secure cloud-based CI/CD solution to automate and secure the building, the testing, and the deployment of your plugins to these Azure services. We have lots of organizations out there taking advantage of this capability today. You know, I think a great example, given we're talking about AI scenarios though, is ChatGPT itself. And ChatGPT is a great example of using this GitHub and Azure combination. You know, OpenAI uses GitHub for their development, and they use Kubernetes on Azure, as well as our Azure Cosmos DB database service to run and scale the actual ChatGPT service as well. And obviously ChatGPT has captured the world's imagination this past 6 months. It's the fastest growing consumer product in the history of the web. And what I'll do now is show another demo on how you can also deploy AI apps using that same GitHub and Azure combination as well.
Now that we're ready to publish the plugin, we need to run it somewhere that's secure and scalable for our customers. At the end of the day, an OpenAI plugin is just a web service. So we're going to use Azure Container Apps to host the production version of our plugin and GitHub Actions to test and deploy it. Now, I could go through these setup steps in the GitHub UI, but today I want to show you how to configure GitHub Actions in Azure, all within the terminal. We'll use the new Azure Developer CLI, or AZD, for these steps. AZD is a command line tool that accelerates the process of building apps on Azure by providing developer-friendly commands that help automate each stage of the developer workflow. I'm going to start by making sure I'm logged into Azure. Next, I'm going to initialize the repo with an AZD template. Templates include everything I need to provision the resources for our plugin and deploy it to Azure Container Apps using GitHub Actions. The component that was added to the repo is the GitHub action. Now, I always have a hard time reading YAML, so let's use Copilot to help us make sense of it. Okay, it looks like our action is going to provision Azure Container Apps and all the other services we need for our production scenarios. And I also see that it's referencing some external variables, so I won't accidentally be checking in any secrets into my repo. Now I'm just going to push my changes to the repo. Let's take a look at what happens when one of these actions runs. I'm going to open the actions log for our repo to see our action running. I can see it's provisioning all the resources we need, and then I can check out the results to get the new URL of our Azure Container Apps where our plugin will run. Now that we have our plugin running on Azure Container Apps, we're able to scale to millions of users with the confidence that our plugin will run securely and with high availability. Our continuous delivery pipeline in GitHub Actions enables the team to collaborate and commit changes while ensuring that the updates are tested and deployed in a repeatable, secure manner.
So we've walked through, how you can clone a sample AI plugin repo, add code to it, set up a CI/CD pipeline, and deploy it into Azure. And as you've seen, everything is pretty easy to do. And what's even better is you can start doing it today. The exact same repo that we've done in all these demos is now public on GitHub, and all of the capabilities that we've shown in terms of Visual Studio and GitHub and Azure are now available for all of you to start building great AI plugins with it. And the beauty is it'll work with not just ChatGPT, but with every Microsoft Copilot experience, as well as the Copilot experiences you build yourself. So we spent some time looking at how to develop AI plugins. Let's now switch gears and talk about and deep dive into what we call AI orchestration. Now, as Kevin explained earlier, AI orchestration involves grounding, prompt design and engineering, evaluation, and AI safety. These are kind of the core fundamentals for how you create great Copilot experiences. And this is exactly how Microsoft created all of our Copilots as well. And if you think about the pace of AI innovation that you've seen from Microsoft over the last 5 months, it's been pretty intense. We've introduced GitHub Copilot, Dynamics 365 Copilot, Power Platform Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, Security Copilot, Nuance, Bing, and more. That's a lot of Copilots. And people are often asking, what's in the water? How are you producing so many Copilots so fast? And the reason we've been able to move at this fast pace is because we built all of these Copilots on top of one platform, which is Azure AI. And this is the exact same platform that all of you can also leverage as you build your own Copilot and AI experiences as well. Azure AI includes several categories of AI capabilities, including our advanced Azure AI infrastructure. An Azure OpenAI service is our newest capability and became generally available in January of this year. The Azure OpenAI service enables developers and organizations to access and use the most advanced AI models in the world, including both ChatGPT and GPT-4. And all of these Microsoft Copilot experiences that you're seeing here at Build are built using these Azure OpenAI models. And again, all of the Microsoft Copilot offerings are built using the exact same Azure OpenAI service and APIs that you can all use to build and scale your own AI solutions as well. Now, what makes the Azure OpenAI service so powerful is that it enables you to ground and fine-tune the AI models with your data. We're making it easy to do this with all of our Azure data services. And this enables you to get much more intelligent and tailored outputs from the AI models. And obviously, as you do it, one of the questions we get asked a lot is, what happens with my data? And the bottom line is it's really important as you're grounding AI with your data that you trust your cloud provider. And obviously, Microsoft and Azure AI runs on trust. We're committed to doing all the right security work, the privacy and compliance work across everything that we do. And we've been doing this with our cloud for over a decade. And our approach to AI is no different. When you use the Azure OpenAI service, your instance is isolated from every other customer. Your data is not used to train or enrich the foundation AI model that's used by others. So you don't have to worry about anyone other than your organization benefiting from AI that's trained on your data. And your data and AI models are protected at every step by the most comprehensive enterprise compliance and security controls in the industry. And that's why more than 4,500 customers are already trusting and using the Azure OpenAI service today. It's the fastest growing service in Azure's history. And what I want to do is show a quick video of a couple of customers that have already built some amazing solutions with it. Let's watch a video.
With Azure OpenAI Service, developers can unlock innovative new ways to delight customers and offer completely new experiences with generative AI. As a leading agreement technology provider, DocuSign set out to help customers and signers better understand their agreements. With a single click, DocuSign extracts key data points, creates an AI-generated summary of a contract, and even allows users to ask questions and get answers quickly, so people can review and sign agreements faster, with more confidence. Thread helps IT technicians improve customer communication by eliminating tickets in favor of conversations that begin in the applications they use every day, like Microsoft Teams. With Azure OpenAI Service, within 2 weeks, Thread developed a tool that automates time entries and streamlines resourcing and service request assignments, saving technicians over an hour per day. Typeface unlocks the creativity of their customers to tell unique stories faster and easier than ever before. Using Microsoft Azure and Azure OpenAI Service, Typeface provides customers like Vasanti Cosmetics with a seamless experience to craft captivating content across marketing channels, while staying true to their distinct brand voice and visual identity. After learning about Vasanti's brand, using images, sample messaging, and branding guidelines, Typeface uses Azure OpenAI Service and other services to provide stunning images and compelling copy in seconds. That is right on brand. Azure OpenAI Service makes the impossible possible for small businesses and startups, as well as large and established brands.
So you just saw some great examples of companies that are already using the Azure OpenAI service within their products. And as you heard, in some cases, it was done in weeks. Let's now dive deep into how you can as well. This week at Build, we're introducing our new Azure AI Studio. The Azure AI Studio makes it incredibly easy to ground your AI models with your own data and to build retrieval augmented generation, or RAG-based solutions. And this enables you to build your own Copilot experiences that are specific to your apps and organizations. And you're going to see we've made it really easy to do so. So please welcome Seth Mares on stage to actually show us how to do it live. Here's Seth.
How's it going, my friends? You're probably sitting here thinking, this has got to be really hard for me to do. I want to build my own Copilot. It turns out that creating your own private company Copilot that understands your data with Azure OpenAI Service has never been simpler. In this scenario, we're the Contoso outdoor company. We're trying to make Contoso happen again. Notice that when I ask it a question that's specific about a return policy, because here, let me type it. I'm a fast typer. But notice I'm asking about camping, and I'm wondering if I'm going to get dirty. And now that I purchased the Trailmaster X410, I want to know, can I send it back? Notice that the response that it gives is effective, and it has the right documentation. So how do you do such a thing, you might ask? Well, it all starts with Azure. You go to the Azure portal and create a new Azure OpenAI resource. And this is just like any other Azure resource. What you do when you get this is you get this Azure AI Studio, which is a new experience which makes it incredibly easy to ground your AI models with your data. I can use any of the available models. Notice here I have GPT-4 and GPT-3 Turbo, amongst others that are on there. Now, this experience allows you also to test it out. I'm using the vanilla chat GPT here, and notice that when I ask it about camping, it has a pretty good answer, and you can see these responses in there. So the question then becomes, what happens when I ask it a specific question about the return policy for the Trailmaster X410? Well, notice it doesn't know. So how do I fix this? How do I put data in there? Well, you've heard a lot from Kevin about something called the RAG pattern, which is where you retrieve facts, inject them into the prompt or augment the prompt, and then what you do is you generate a new response. Now, the thing that I want to say about this studio as you're looking at it is this is your very own Azure AI Studio. It only benefits you. No one else can see your data. This is just for you. So this RAG pattern that Kevin talked about is such a common pattern that we've simplified it to just a few clicks. So let me go ahead and click Add Data, and then go to Add Data Source. Look, I got excited and started doing it backstage. Notice that when you add your data source, you can select from a number of different data sources. All the modalities available to you on Azure. Also, with cognitive search, as you heard about before, there is a new vector embedding available to you right in there. Also, the cool thing about cognitive search is it can crack open your PDF documents and your Word files and be in there. All right, so let's keep going. I acknowledge that I am connecting to an Azure service. Now let's map some of the data together. There's the content, there's the file name, there's the title. This is the best part of programming. Hit next. Oh, here's a cool feature. So this is a cool feature that we also added into this experience where you can limit responses to the data content that you retrieve, or you can let the service also augment some of that information as well. I'm going to leave it off. Okay, let's hit Save Data, and now I'm going to ask it some of the same questions from before. I'm really concerned about cleanliness and camping, apparently. Who wrote this? So notice that I'm getting a better answer that's grounded in data. And also, when I ask it about a specific policy, return policy for the Trailmaster X410, I want you to notice something about the answer, which is really cool. Notice, not only do you get an answer, but you get the citations from your actual data. What happened is when the query went in, it retrieved your data, injected it into the prompt, and provided the answers. As you can see, this is pretty simple. Once you've got this working in the playground and your interaction flow is set up, everything is exposed as an API. You can use it in any application and surface it natively in whatever existing application you have, like this one, taking full advantage of the power of Azure AI. It's pretty cool, right?
Great. Thanks, Seth. And as you saw, Seth just showed you how incredibly easy it is to ground the Azure OpenAI service using your own data. Keep it private and specific just to your organization, so only you benefit from it. And then this enables you to build great Copilot experiences that are specific to your apps, specific to your organizations. And the great thing is what Seth just demoed is now in preview for you all to use. So data grounding is a critical part of how we build applications. As Kevin covered in his talk, AI orchestration also includes prompt engineering. And prompt engineering involves constructing the prompt and the meta prompt that you provide the AI model to produce a stronger, more specific response for the user. And this week at Build, we're introducing our new prompt flow support in Azure AI. Prompt flow provides end-to-end AI development tooling that supports prompt construction, orchestration, testing, evaluation, and deployment. And it makes it incredibly easy to leverage open source tools and frameworks like semantic kernel and LangChain to build your AI solution as well. And so let's go ahead and take a look at prompt flow in action. And Seth, back to you.
Let's do it. All right, so before, remember, we were looking at just the documents. This time, we want to look at a little bit more. So this is the same e-commerce application from before, which could be any SaaS company or product. Notice I'm going to ask it about jackets, but this time, I'm going to be logged in as Jane, who has a very specific shopping cart. Remember before, it was just a bunch of documents that were used to augment the prompt, but can we do more? Can we add more information into the prompt? And it looks like we certainly can. Notice that we're getting a good response to our data, as well as it's telling us how well it pairs with the stuff in our actual cart, and they are actually in there, which is pretty cool. To do this, we are using a brand new Azure AI feature called Prompt Flow. It's pretty cool. This is really cool. You should clap a little bit. This is so cool. This is really cool stuff. This is a powerful suite of tools and services designed for prompt engineering regardless of your experience in machine learning or AI. It's the first end-to-end prompt engineering tool of its kind. It includes tooling for prompt construction, evaluation, deployment, testing, and even monitoring. With Azure AI Prompt Flow, we can fetch data from multiple sources and fetch it and put it directly into the prompt, whether it's structured, unstructured. It's pretty cool. I'm going to show you three things. There's a ton of things in here, but I'm just going to show you three. First, the graph, the prompt, and then the model. This here is the prompt flow graph. And what's cool about this is you can get structured information coming into here, like a JSON file, and you can flow information down into the prompt. So data flows down into the prompt, like flow prompt, but we called it prompt flow. So that's the first thing. Let me show you the retrieve cart node, which is pretty cool. I'm going to just show you one node. Notice that this node takes the cart ID and calls this minimal API. And this minimal API is written in .NET, so it looks like I closed it. Why would I ever do that? I'm so sorry. So it's a minimal API that you can call that has C# in the backend. Now, the reason why I want to show you this really quickly is to show you how extensible this is. If I can call an API, I can do anything as I'm doing things in the prompt. In fact, that API that I'm calling that you see right here is exactly the same API that manages the cart on the website. It's exactly the same thing. I'm not even kidding. It's the same thing. I could show you the back end, but I forgot to open Visual Studio Code. So the thing about this extensibility that's actually really cool is that because of that, we can extend to things like LangChain, semantic kernel, or other tools that are data-based, forgive the pun, that can pull data into your prompt, or really anything else. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to show you. The second thing I wanted to show you was the actual prompt. So this is the prompt that we're building. Notice that this prompt is a bunch of text that gets data from the previous nodes. So as I zoom in, notice that it's enumerating the items of the cart and putting it into the prompt. That's how it knows when it generates the actual response. This then gets put into the model that then is the answer is retrieved. This model can be any of the OpenAI models that you saw before, including any OSS models that you deploy in Azure ML. All right, so let's go to the actual model call. This is where we call the model. We can run it directly in here. We can also bulk test and deploy. And if you want to see the responses, you can see the responses right here, which is the answer we saw before, as well as the actual trace of where and how long things take. Finally, you can deploy this, and you can use it in your app as a single endpoint. In summary, PromptFlow empowers developers to create richer language experiences that integrate data from multiple sources, providing personalized and contextually relevant information to your users. With its focus on simplicity, flexibility, and user engagement, PromptFlow is the first prompt engineering tool of its kind, first end-to-end prompt engineering tool of its kind. I'm excited to see what you build with it. Back to you, Scott.
Thanks, Seth. So PromptFlow is an end-to-end system for building, testing, and deploying modern AI-driven applications. And as you just saw, PromptFlow works not just with our Azure OpenAI service, but also with thousands of open source AI models as well. And this week at Build, we're also releasing a new Azure AI model catalog that makes it incredibly easy for you to also use and consume every open source model out there across your Azure AI solutions. Now, PromptFlow and Azure AI can also help you test and evaluate your AI applications to help ensure that your prompts are running safely. And in this new era of AI, considering safety is not an optional feature, it's really a requirement. And it can't be an afterthought. You really need to design with safety from the very beginning. And every AI system that we build at Microsoft is designed to uphold our AI principles. And this week, we're announcing our new Azure AI Content Safety Service to make it easier for you to also test and evaluate your AI deployments for safety as well. Now, the Azure AI Content Safety Service provides the same technologies that we use internally to build our own Microsoft Copilot experiences. And so you can also benefit from all the learnings that we've had in terms of making sure that our products are secure and safe. And so to share more, let me introduce Sarah Bird, who leads our responsible AI effort at Microsoft, to talk about how we're doing this. Please welcome Sarah.
Thanks, Scott. The recent breakthroughs in foundation models have also transformed what's possible in responsible AI, enabling us to develop new state-of-the-art tools and technologies that previously we only could have dreamed of. We've built on top of these AI models deep understanding of text, image, and multimodal content, and have developed a new Azure AI service to automatically detect undesirable content, making it easier to keep online communities, applications, and AI systems safe. We know from our own experiences building GitHub Copilot, Bing Chat, and Microsoft 365 Copilot that safety is a key part of building any Copilot. We use a defense in depth or layered approach to safety. First, we've worked with OpenAI to build safety directly into the model so it can recognize problematic queries and respond appropriately. Now let's talk about the next two layers, the layers that you control, the safety system and the meta prompt. I'll start by showing you the safety system, Azure AI Content Safety. Let's take a look.
Azure AI Content Safety is an API-based product that can be deployed as part of any application to monitor for harmful content in real time. I'm in the studio so that we can explore how it works interactively. For the Contoso bot, most people are going to be asking appropriate queries about products they'd like to buy. For example, here's a user query looking for an axe to cut a path in the forest. If we ask Content Safety to score this, we can see that it recognizes it as safe. However, one of the challenges with language is that small changes can completely change the meaning. But the power of new foundation models and Azure AI Content Safety is that it can understand these differences. So if I change even a single word in the sentence and rerun the query, you can see that Azure AI Content Safety understands that this query is not safe and it would reject it. Here, I'm using the default settings, but if I want, I can adjust the severity levels to meet the needs of my application and deploy this through the API in production. Contoso uses Azure OpenAI, so Azure AI Content Safety is already built in. Returning to the Contoso bot, I can test these same queries again. Here, I'm going to start with a recommendation for cutting a path. As you can see, the Contoso bot is prepared to recommend products the customer can buy. However, if I pretend to be a user with the same harmful query as before, I can see the safety systems in action, and my bot knows to reject it, protecting Contoso and its users.
Pretty cool, right? If you're using an So if you're using an open source LLM, you can call Azure AI Content Safety directly using the API. However, if you're using Azure OpenAI, you're starting with the first 2 layers of safety from the beginning. Regardless of what model you're using, the next area that you want to focus on is the meta prompt, that system-level prompt that you feed into the model to control its output. Here we have an example of the safety portion of the meta prompt for the Contoso application that Seth showed. As you can see, it's simply instructing the model in natural language to control for grounding the response, for controlling the tone, for safety, and to prevent attempts to break the model's safety systems. But what I really want to show you is how you can engineer and experiment with these kind of meta prompts using Azure AI Prompt Flow. Let's take a look.
I'm going back to the Contoso retail flow that Seth showed earlier to experiment with the meta prompt and add the safety section I just showed you. Rather than just push it to production, I also want to test it first. Built into Azure AI is a system for testing prompt variants. As you can see, I'm testing 2 variants here. Variant 0 contains the new safety section. Now I'm going to use Prompt Flow to see how these 2 compare. Prompt Flow provides built-in metrics, which makes it easy for me to evaluate. Let's look at the results. First, I'm going to look at the outputs of the system to understand how these 2 prompts stack up qualitatively. I can see immediately that there are differences in how they behave. And if I go to example 3, which is the example of a user trying to jailbreak the system, I can see that variant 0 outperforms variant 1 because variant 0 refuses to give information about its prompt, while variant 1 is successfully jailbroken. Now that I've looked at the examples, I want to understand how these 2 compare overall by looking at metrics. I can see that variant 0 is outperforming variant 1 across the board, with higher scores in groundedness, relevance, and coherence, which means it's the clear winner for me. And now I can confidently deploy to production and bring the power of AI to Contoso shopping experiences.
Here, you've seen the combined power of Azure AI Content Safety integrated in Azure OpenAI and meta prompt evaluation in Prompt Flow to build safety into Copilot. This is just a glimpse of some of the new responsible AI capabilities we have in Azure AI. We're making it easier to build real-world, mission-critical, safe, and secure AI solutions that you can trust and use in your business. Scott, back to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks so much, Sarah. In this new era of AI, as I said earlier, safety is not an optional feature. It is a requirement. It can't be an afterthought. You need to design with safety in mind from the very beginning. And with services like the Azure AI Content Safety service, we're providing you with powerful capabilities that are built into Azure AI, automatically integrated into Azure AI already for you, that'll help you be safe and secure as you build your AI solutions. So now that we've covered the Azure AI and the Copilot stack, let's now dive deep onto our Azure AI infrastructure. Now, we've invested heavily over many years now to make Azure the place to do cutting-edge AI innovation. Azure is very much now the world's AI supercomputer, and it's the infrastructure that's powering not just the ChatGPT experience, but all of the AI products and services coming from Microsoft. But it's also the AI supercomputer that was used to train the large foundation models that OpenAI produced. And to do this, we've built purpose-built AI infrastructure to deliver reliability and performance at scale. We built the largest AI model training system in the world, one with tens of thousands of interconnected GPUs and fast networking. The picture here is one of our new NVIDIA Hopper-based GPU systems. Azure was the first cloud provider in the world to deploy and offer Hopper-based GPU systems to customers. And the picture here, you can see a lot of cables. These are InfiniBand cables, and they're really important for our GPU clusters, and it's one of the ways that we really differentiate ourselves from others. Neither AWS nor Google support InfiniBand today. And InfiniBand gives Azure the highest network bandwidth and lowest network latency of any cloud hyperscaler in the world today. That picture shows you what the servers are. Now let's switch gears now and take a look at what one of these data center facilities looks like. The picture on the top right, you can see one of our new data centers that we're building to add to our Azure cloud region in Dublin. And those little things are tractors and cars. So it gives you a sense of the scale. And that building is just one data center that we're commissioning and adding into that region. And to give you a sense of the scale that Azure is now operating at, we'll now bring live more than 120 data centers this calendar year alone. That's one new data center every 3 days. And most of these data centers, like this one, are ones that we're designing and building ourselves. And multiple data centers then make up what we call an Azure region that you can deploy across. Now, our Azure region in Dublin is made up of many, many data centers like this one. And it's, in total size, it's already over 1.5 miles long and half a mile wide. And already has 2 million square feet of data center floor space that's already live that you can deploy your workloads in today. And to put 2 million square feet in perspective, that's the equivalent of 35 football stadiums in size, all just in one region inside Dublin. And Dublin is less than 3% of our total data center footprint around the world today. We now have more than 60 Azure regions live. Dublin is just one of those dots there on the map. That's more regions and in more countries than any other cloud provider. And we're bringing all of this scale and all this power to you so that you can build amazing solutions on top of it. But we also know that with all that power comes responsibility. We started our sustainability journey at Microsoft more than a decade ago, and we're committed to leveraging 100% renewable energy by 2025. And our data centers, including all of the new AI infrastructure that we're deploying, are very much part of that commitment. As an example, our data centers in Sweden use free air cooling to reduce carbon emissions, while in Arizona, we're using solar power. In Finland, we're reusing heat energy produced by the data centers to warm homes in the winter in Helsinki to help further reduce the carbon emissions from the local community as well. And Microsoft, including all of our Microsoft Cloud data centers, will be carbon negative by 2030. And by 2050, we'll have removed all historical carbon emitted by Microsoft since our founding in 1975. Now, the Azure AI infrastructure is being used for many, many different AI models and scenarios. We're talking at this conference and today a lot about the great work we're doing with OpenAI and LLMs on Azure. But we're also using this exact same infrastructure for many other AI models and experiences as well. And another unique AI partnership we have is with NVIDIA. NVIDIA is bringing its AI software to Azure by integrating NVIDIA's AI enterprise with Azure AI. Organizations are going to be able to have a secure, enterprise-ready platform to quickly build and deploy custom machine learning models. And NVIDIA's Omniverse Cloud provides a full stack environment to design, develop, deploy, and manage industrial metaverse applications. And this gives enterprises access to the full stack suite of Omniverse software applications and NVIDIA OVX infrastructure to scale and combine it with the scale and security of Azure. Azure is the only cloud provider offering Omniverse Cloud today. And with Omniverse Cloud on Azure, organizations like BMW are now able to build truly virtual factories. The BMW team can aggregate data into massive high-performance models, connect their domain-specific software tools, and enable multi-user live collaboration across factory locations. They can run real-time digital twin simulations, virtually optimizing layouts, robotics, and logistics systems, even years before a factory opens. And it's all possible from any location and on any device. Now, data, all the AI innovation that we've seen today is built on top of a foundation of data. Data is really the fuel that powers AI. And AI is only as good as your data. And so it's never been more important to have a great data analytics and data management foundation in place. And this week at Build, we're excited to announce Microsoft Fabric, a unified platform for data analytics, really designed for the era of AI. With Microsoft Fabric, we're bringing together Power BI, Data Factory, and the next generation of Synapse. And Fabric unifies all these analytics tools at every layer into one seamless product with one experience and one common architecture. You literally have unification at every layer. Unified data, a unified product experience for all your data professionals to collaborate in, unified governance and security, providing a single source of truth for everyone in the organization and a single way to secure it, and a unified business model to help ensure that all your resources are used in the most cost-effective way. This complete platform really delivers data analytics as a software as a service model, just like Microsoft 365, making it much easier to stand up and manage, with frictionless onboarding, automatic optimization and integration, built-in security, governance, and compliance. It's lake-centric and has an open data architecture, and it has deep integration with Microsoft 365. And what's great is it's designed in particular for the era of AI with built-in Copilot support. And this Copilot support enables you to use AI to understand and reason over data in extraordinary new ways. And what I do is show a video of some of these new capabilities in action.
Let's take a look at how Copilot in Power BI is empowering everyone to quickly find and share insights. For example, say I'm an HR analyst who is constantly handling requests from my management to do analysis and provide answers. It can take hours and even days to respond with new reports. Now with Copilot in Power BI, I can simply describe the report I want to build and get insights in seconds. Maybe we need a breakdown of some of our employee data to understand demographics and hiring trends. I just describe what I need, and Copilot will automatically analyze my data and create a new report based on my needs. Immediately, I have a beautiful Power BI report that has been automatically created and is fully interactive. I can start slicing and dicing my data to explore deeper. Copilot added the charts and slicers I asked for, but also conveniently gives me options to adjust the output to get just what I need. For example, let's switch to ask for metrics and trends in a slightly different layout. Automatically, Copilot updates the report. Let's go ahead and keep this report page. It goes much further. I can also ask questions such as, why is our attrition rate going up? Copilot responds by adding a new page to my report and tapping into Power BI's built-in advanced analysis capabilities for finding key influencers for variables in my data. In addition to giving me a summary of an insight about different employee types having different attrition rates, I can easily explore Power BI's key influencer visual to see what's driving the biggest impact in our attrition rate. I can even automatically see the most significant segments in my data just by clicking. Now let's go back to the first page and finish up our new report. I'm going to ask Copilot to make it look like our existing exec dashboard, and instantly it's applied the same formatting and style and adjusted the layout to match. Best of all, I can still interact directly with the Power BI report that Copilot has created. So for example, if I wanted to manually change this bar chart to a tree map on my own, it's easy to do with just a few clicks. Let's add employee functional area, and now I can filter by this new field. Finally, to make the report even easier for my team to understand, I'm going to ask Copilot to add a rich text description of my data right inside the report. This narrative summary is fully dynamic, and not only does Copilot highlight interesting insights from my data, it will update the summary every time the data is refreshed or people filter the report. And just like that, in seconds, I've created a report that would have taken hours or days to do manually. Copilot, built on top of Azure OpenAI, is truly revolutionary for how we empower everyone to find and share insights.
And what you saw there is how we're able to organize data in Microsoft Fabric and in turn enable this amazing natural language experience in Power BI on top of it. You know, Microsoft Fabric is designed for the era of AI, and its serverless data management engine is tuned for advanced AI scenarios like that. And with Microsoft Fabric, we have a deep commitment as well to open formats and APIs. You know, Fabric comes with a SaaS multi-cloud data lake, we call OneLake, that's built in and automatically available to every Microsoft tenant. OneLake is built on open formats, including Delta and Parquet, meaning it's compatible with solutions like Databricks and other open source tools. And since we know that many customers want to build AI solutions using data that might already be stored in other clouds, we've also built Microsoft Fabric to work across clouds, including AWS and in the future Google. And I'm incredibly pleased to announce that Microsoft Fabric is now available in public preview for everyone to use. We have some great sessions on Microsoft Fabric, and you're going to be able to learn a lot more about it later this week at Build. So we have an exciting future ahead of us. You know, Azure and the Microsoft Cloud, you know, is the place for every developer and every organization on the planet to be able to innovate using AI. We're really looking forward to building some great AI solutions with you together, and I hope you have a great rest of the build and a great rest of the day. Thank you very much.
What an amazing start to Microsoft Build. I'm Kara Wanagatimu, joining you live from the Seattle Convention Center, where our Day 1 keynotes just wrapped. Throughout the event, we'll chat with industry leaders across the company and the world. Plus, for the first time, we're bringing you backstage to talk with some of the minds behind our keynotes and breakout sessions moments after they get off stage. In fact, our own Seth Juarez is live with Scott Guthrie right now. Seth, over to you.
He's right here, the man with a plan. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well.
So you just got off the keynote. Is it a little bit of excitement? You're excited to be done?
It's nice to be done.
Oh, it's
always a little
You're
stressful.
telling me. So what was the most exciting things for you during the keynote that you were excited about?
Well, you know, there's a lot. I mean, I was excited just in terms of seeing how everything fits together, you know, across all the keynotes, not just mine, but also Kevin and Satya's. You know, we've really infused AI across every Microsoft product. And the beauty is all of that AI is built on top of Azure. It's built on top of the same developer services that everyone outside Microsoft can leverage. And it's got a seamless experience with GitHub and Visual Studio so that developers can use the tools they love in order to build amazing Copilot applications, amazing plugins, amazing data lakes. And you know, I love that we were able to show literally how you do that through the demos. It's not just slideware, it's like real. And
that's what I was
it's
asking.
available this week.
That's what I was asking you. This is all real stuff. People are actually hitting endpoints. It's real stuff.
Yeah, and you know, we're turning on a lot of the URLs right now.
Yeah.
So you know, basically both a plugin demo I showed as an example, Fabric, which I just announced, and a whole bunch more that you did demos on.
Awesome.
Great demos, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. You're not just saying that because people are here.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
Thank you.
It's fun. I mean, and that's you know, that's going to be fun to see what people build with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Scott. Thanks. Over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Seth. All right, get ready to put a smile on your face, and please welcome Azure Data Center launch lead, Devin Allen. Devin, welcome to Build.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here, and it's actually my first time ever attending Build, and I flew straight here from Poland to celebrate the opening of our newest data center region.
I love it. I love it. All right, so you're going to be here to talk about a new video series that brings us up close and personal with some inspiring stories. But before we chat about that, let's go ahead and get a quick taste of what the series is all about. Let's roll that clip.
Amazing.
The geopolitical history of Poland forces Polish people to innovate faster.
I think it's in our DNA of Swedish people to build from day one to grow outside of Sweden.
It's not about technology alone, it's how people build quality into it.
I'm so impressed by how you're taking technology to create empowerment.
It's together that we can tackle all the challenges.
I love that. It looks so great. So for the people at home, tell us a little bit about what is Cloud Cultures.
Would love to. So as you could see in the video, Cloud Cultures is a video series that is hosted by our very own Corey Sanders.
Love Corey.
He's great. CVP of Microsoft Cloud for Industry. And essentially, we follow him along on his journey throughout Europe as he visits some of our newest and also existing fast-growing cloud regions. And essentially what we do is we want to take a step back away from the weeds of the technology to really focus on the people and highlighting the people behind the technology who are using it to do good and make a better world around them. But then also exploring how their culture, how their beliefs, how their values all play a role in innovation in the market.
That's great. And you mentioned at the top, like you just came in from Poland. Like what experiences did you get? Like what's the big takeaway that you have from your time in Poland and from your time kind of working on some of these series and with these data centers with the people?
I would say there are two things that really stood out to me in Poland. The first one really being, how much the history and specifically the geopolitical history in Poland impacts technology and innovation in the market. And you can really see this and feel this in conversations with people there, but also in the stories that we're highlighting. And then another thing that I really, really loved and that stood out to me was around accessibility and inclusion and making sure that new technology is accessible and the opportunity that comes from it is also accessible. And so one of the stories you'll see actually outside of a customer video is from a woman named Tanya, who's a part of one of our skilling programs in Poland, and specifically focusing on upskilling in cybersecurity and IT, and for Polish and Ukrainian women.
Great.
So, yes.
Fantastic. All right, Devin, we love this. If you want to check this out, be sure to go to datacenters.microsoft.com. Check out the full series, see Tanya's story. We love it. Now back over to you, Caruana.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Joining me now is Group Product Manager Anthony Cangliosi. And Anthony, you're here to talk about Microsoft DevBox and Azure deployment environments. I know you are. So what is exciting and what's happening in this area right now?
We have a lot of things that we're really excited about today, two in particular. One is that DevBox and deployment environments are two of many of the services today that are really bringing joy back into the developer experience by really taking a lot of mundane work out of your day-to-day life.
I love that. We had this conversation as we were prepping, developer joy. Like it's a concept I think that people underestimate the power of. But for me, joy in my work leads to creativity, don't you think?
Absolutely. And how do you get creative? You need to spend time immersing yourself in the tools. I love the hashtag, I just want to code, and get everything else out of the way.
Right.
DevBox deployment environments are all about helping developers get there.
Absolutely. So with the ease of code writing and with all these innovations we're seeing, why is writing code in the cloud more important than ever before?
Well, it solves a whole set of problems that I don't think we really spent a lot of time thinking about, where today we spend a ton of time setting up our workstations, getting them just right. We treat them like pets. We have to protect them because, God forbid, anything goes wrong, we've lost our flow, right? Yes. And so when you turn that and you treat that to like more of a commodity, like we do our servers, now you create a DevBox, you get working, you drop that one, you create the next one, you go again. You move from task to task, and you have so much more flexibility.
I can't wait to bring this into my own workflow because I had that problem not that long ago. And I remember the pain of having to switch my machine out. I was like, oh, that's so awful.
We all remember that hard drive that died, that laptop that fell in the lake, right? Like, this eliminates that because all of this is in the cloud. So now it's protected, it's secured, it's isolated, but on top of that now, it's flexible. So you can create many dev boxes. You can have one for your day-to-day work, and you can start an experiment in a second one, not worrying about, hey, is that going to poison my main work environment? Because you can get productive, try something, and let it go.
Absolutely. And now with this iterative learning that we need to be doing, I think that's even more important, having these environments that you can easily spin up and take down and what have you. There's so much going on, from impactful moments in all of these sessions. If the audience takes one thing away from your message, what would it be?
Well, DevBox is going to be GA in July, so it's ready for prime time for people to get started right away, and it'll be available for everybody. Deployment environments is GAing today right here at Build.
That is fantastic. If you want to know more, you can visit ak.ms DevBox and ak.ms Deployment Environments. Thanks for joining us, Anthony.
Thanks.
Microsoft Build has tons of great sessions from the successful established companies you've probably already used to help make your dev projects work. But Microsoft Build is also for the up-and-coming startups, and we've got some really exciting new companies highlighted in our featured partner directory. Check out some of the AI solutions already in the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace from Orsys, Run AI, and StatSig. All you have to do is head to the Startup Spotlight in the partner directory to learn about these and other terrific startups right here at Microsoft Build. And so there's just so much going on here. I love the focus on developer joy, really making sure we're still having fun with fundamentals, but also continuing to move on this issue of making real those scenarios that you can empower with AI, right? Remember that we wanted to bring in Christina here too, because I know that she's been having these same conversations. Christina, I'm kind of blown away by all the things that are going on. That was a great interview you did also.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So was yours. There's so much exciting stuff happening, as you can see around me here in the Convention Center. We've got people headed to sessions, which is great. And, you know, Kevin Scott, he mentioned something in his keynote, like do groundbreaking-ish. He gets to say the proper word. I don't think that I do. But that, to me, I think is really kind of the thesis of this entire event, right? Like, do groundbreaking stuff. Like, make amazing things. And that's what's really exciting and encouraging about all of this.
If there was one call to action, make amazing things. I think that's it for sure. And, you know, you can see people here, and I know they're doing this in our online audience, but they're also doing it here. They're following up, they're reading, they're learning, they're starting to dig in. And I feel like digging in to everything that we have to learn now, that's when don't be overwhelmed. Take it 1 minute at a time, one course at a time, one topic at a time, and then just let yourself be free in your creativity, and it'll help you so much. Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you, Caruana.
Remember to keep the conversation going throughout the event and all year long on Twitter using the hashtag MSBuild. Now it's time to send it over to our session, injecting the power of the cloud and AI into your development workflow. We'll catch you right back here when you're finished. This is Microsoft Build.
Please welcome Corporate Vice President, Head of Product, Developer Division, Amanda Silver.
Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Build 2023. I'm Amanda Silver. I'm the Head of Product for Microsoft's Developer Division. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be here with all of you today in person to talk about developer experience and how much better it's going to get, radically better, with the power of cloud and artificial intelligence. You know, early on in my career, I discovered that my personal mission, what motivates me every single day, is to help developers and their teams unleash their ingenuity so they can build the stuff that matters. As developers, we all do this by getting inspired by who we're building for. My team and I are inspired by you, developers, so we continually strive to make it easier for you to go from a concept to code to your customer. We know that developers and their teams are burning time and energy and creative bandwidth on adapting to hybrid-first environments, dealing with operational toil, like responding to the latest security vulnerability that may or may not be exploitable in your code. encountering engineering systems friction, like waiting for automated tests to pass or waiting for the compiler to just compile already, and getting sidetracked by constant distractions and interruptions. We work on ensuring that you and your teams can focus on writing the code that only you can write. We know that being a happy and a successful developer depends on your ability to get into that sweet spot, get into that flow, get into that zone. So today, we're going to talk about how we're using the power of the cloud and AI to advance 3 key areas to help you and your teams achieve more dev and less ops, more focus and less frustration, more intelligence and innovation and less iteration. First, I want to dive into how we're tackling this for the individual developer experience. And what I really mean by that is how the latest additions to our tools and services can really help you improve your day-to-day life as a developer, freeing you up so you can focus on the more creative aspects of product making. Over 38 million developers write their code in one of the Visual Studio family of products each month. We've grown from a primarily .NET and C++ user base to having premier tools for Node and Python and Java and more. And it's the tight feedback loops with real developers like you in mind that's allowed us to improve our products. At the same time, the complexity of distributed cloud applications connecting to multiple clients and an increasingly hostile security environment means that you're being asked to master many, many more domains. So we've integrated AI into our IDEs. We're innovating in dimensions of the developer experience that we believe will help you move more fluidly. We want onboarding times to be minimal, and we want it to be easier to learn new domains. Generating boilerplate code and adopting best practices should be less taxing and time-consuming, and we want to help you quickly understand your context so that you can diagnose issues right away. This is really what allows you to focus on what matters most, building great software that makes a difference for your organization and your end customers. We first previewed GitHub Copilot in partnership with OpenAI back in June 2021, and we're already seeing its effects on the end-to-end developer experience. When we put Copilot to the test, we found that developers were able to move through their workflows significantly faster than before, and we even heard from folks that it's allowed them to code at the speed of thought, which is pretty incredible. But more importantly, developers using GitHub Copilot say that they're happier and more fulfilled because of it, and that's really what it's all about. So we're keeping the momentum going. As we continue to innovate, we're evolving GitHub Copilot into a readily accessible AI assistant throughout the entire developer lifecycle. And with that, I want to ask Leslie Richardson to join me on stage to show you how all of this works in the latest version of Visual Studio. Leslie? Great.
Thanks, Amanda, and hi, everyone. So in this demo, I'm going to share a recording of one of my colleagues' recent experiences onboarding to a new project and how GitHub Copilot helped him ramp up on his work quickly. So let's get started. So GitHub Copilot gives you new and powerful conversational AI experience in Visual Studio, going beyond the basic code completions in favor of insights into your code, such as analysis, explanations, and my personal favorite, code fixes. I can easily ask Copilot questions in my natural language, in line with my code, and using that code context, Copilot will give me smart analysis and suggestions. On top of all this, Visual Studio teams up to gather the right context to help me form some good questions in order to get some great answers. So let's take a look at an example. So Mark is a new developer. He's just joined this team. He just joined our team, and he's working on a podcast app. This app consists of a bunch of different components, including ASP.NET Core, Blazor, Maui, Playwright, among other things. And one of the first tasks that Mark has been given is having to update this class called Podcast Update Handler. But because he's new to this code base, he's going to ask Copilot, what in the world does this class even do? And sure enough, using the Copilot chat feature, Copilot will give him a brief overview of what this class is in the context of the larger project, allowing him to quickly ramp up on what this class is and be able to engage with his more experienced teammates. From there, he needs to go ahead and start updating this get new episodes method so that there aren't any UI conflicts. And as he starts to write his for each block, you'll notice that Copilot already starts to give him code completion suggestions based around the collection that he's referencing in the line previous. So after accepting that, he can then start to write his if statement, and once again, he'll get an additional completion suggestion based around the object's properties. So he can choose which property that he needs for this particular scenario, as well as the pattern that most suits him. Again, because he's new to this code base, he's also going to ask Copilot, how would you go about calling this method? And Copilot will give him some scenarios as to how to best call handle update async. But because he also wants to get ahead on some bugs, he also proceeds to ask Copilot, but what could possibly go wrong with this method? And not only can Copilot tell him a couple issues that can arise, he can then ask Copilot to just rewrite this entire method for him without in a way that will address all of those issues. And just by hitting the insert button, he can drag and drop this entire block of code, in this case a try-catch block, into his code that addresses all of those problems. So from there, the next thing he wants to do is validate his code and make sure everything's working. So he's going to add some unit tests with the help of Copilot. And as he starts to tell Copilot to add some unit tests, you'll notice Visual Studio gives him a pre-generated question that he can use instead of having to type all that by himself. And sure enough, Copilot gives him a full series of unit tests just based off of that one command, including the mocking up of a key service. So just to sum up what just happened here, Mark was able to quickly learn up on a class and how it worked, identify and fix issues that could possibly go wrong within that code, write a whole series of unit tests, all with the help of Copilot, and it's not even the end of his first day on the job. How sweet is that? So Copilot can also come in clutch when it comes time to diagnose and debug your issues. So because Mark finished that first task so quickly with the help of Copilot, his next one is to start investigating and testing out some workflows. And along the way, he encounters an object-disposed exception, which he's seen before, but he doesn't know what that means in the context of this particular scenario. So Copilot to the rescue. And Copilot will not only tell him what this exception means, but also the specifics of what's going on. So in this case, he's trying to access an object that's already been disposed of. And to fix it, he simply needs to change his method from async void to async task. So another issue that he's experiencing involves having to diagnose some issues that's returning unexpected values from some signal processing math. But why is this happening? He's not familiar with NaN either, so asking Copilot again what all of this means, not only will Copilot tell him what NaN or not a number means, but because Copilot has access to his debugging context at that particular point in time, Copilot is able to give him a contextual explanation with specific problematic variables and values. So he can get the exact issue and scenario that best suits his particular needs without having to go to Stack Overflow or without having to wait for that call from a teammate for help. And again, he can simply ask Copilot to rewrite that method so that that issue no longer occurs. So at this point, you're probably wondering, how is Mark able to do this with what appears to be such a large solution and a device, in his case, that's tailored for portability and battery life? How is he able to be so productive? Well, if you've been paying attention, that's because Mark has been using a Microsoft dev box. So Mark has been given a pre-configured dev box from our team with all of the tools and specifications that he needs to complete his work. This includes, in his case, a lot of RAM, a fast SSD, and the latest version of Visual Studio Enterprise. Mark also works on several projects across his org, each having their own unique tools and dependencies. And in turn, each dev box that he uses has its own project-specific configuration, making it very easy to onboard and making it easy to quickly swap back and forth between each project that he has. This also means he gets to skip that fun first week on the job of having to get past all of those initial setup roadblocks that everyone loves, right? And he can also create a new dev box from a list of pre-configured projects to start fresh and isolate his work. So of course, when Visual Studio comes into play when it comes to DevBox, it is tailor-made for it, especially in terms of performance. Visual Studio takes advantage of features such as perf catching, single sign-on, and unified settings. So you can have the same productive experience in Visual Studio within a DevBox as you would on your local machine. So as you can see, both DevBox and GitHub Copilot can help you become lots more productive and ramp up on projects and new concepts quickly. So make sure you try them both out today if you're not already. And thanks, y'all. So back to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Leslie. I can't even tell you how excited I am about all these new use cases for AI assistants. They're all just so helpful. GitHub Copilot is already available to every organization, regardless of whether or not you use GitHub as your source code repository. And if you're here today in person, you'll get early access to Copilot chat, so be sure to scan that QR code and get access to it. And make sure you also have the latest version of Visual Studio, which, in addition to the editor performance improvements and new debugging features, it will also gather all of the right context so that you can form those good questions to get the most out of Copilot chat. Using Visual Studio and Copilot together is really what's going to deliver the best developer experience. Now, as Leslie mentioned, all of that magic in Leslie's demo happened inside of a Microsoft Dev Box. One of the biggest pain points in starting a new project or getting going on a new team is setting up your dev environment. And I'm sure that at one point or another, you've all experienced the frustration that comes with spending an entire day, or even sometimes more, on machine setup before you even get to coding. Cloud-based environments like Microsoft DevBox and GitHub Codespaces make it so much easier to start contributing to your team's code base right away, regardless of where you are or what machine you're working with, and without compromising on security. All that is to say, Leslie showed us what a fantastic individual developer experience can look like. But now, we're living in a hybrid-first world where dev teams are expected to work together even when they're not together live. This means that our technology needs to work harder to keep complicated processes simple and streamlined so that they can accelerate developer velocity. And we need consistency in our environments to make sure that we're maintaining quality. So I want to spend some time talking about how we can set up the kind of super productive developer experience that Leslie showed us with a sound infrastructure that teams can easily scale and replicate. Let's start by talking about what Microsoft DevBox means for teams. Earlier, we talked about how complicated it can be to set up your environments, and this really simplifies that process so that it's amortized across the entire team. Microsoft DevBoxes can be tailored on a project-by-project basis so that it has the latest updated source code and build artifacts, and that makes onboarding new developers a matter of minutes as opposed to days. And DevBoxes are cloud PCs built on Windows 365, so it comes with anywhere access and secure management through Intune and Microsoft Endpoint Manager. It's self-service for developers, so they can request additional machines for elastic environments while ensuring that the environments remain isolated and secure. And it's also cost-optimized for developer scenarios with hibernation and timed and triggered shutdown functionality that allows you to pay for only what you use. But you all know that there's a lot more to building an application than just setting up the necessary SDKs and tools in a dev box. Building modern cloud-native apps requires a developer to create everything that the app depends on, which can be super complicated. What we're showing here is pretty typical for an application. If I was a new developer joining the team and I had to set up this environment on my own, it would be pretty easy for me to make a mistake or to open up a security hole. The enterprise I work for probably doesn't want me to have this much control over all of the resources, and it's also not exactly how I want to be spending my time. So how do we increase the productivity and the quality for hybrid development teams at scale? We build on the best practices of GitOps with Azure deployment environments. Azure deployment environments make it easy to implement GitOps by tightly integrating Git-based version control, pull request workflows, and automated deployments. And this really helps maintain a reliable, consistent, and auditable deployment process, and it improves collaboration, and it promotes best practices within development teams. And here's what it looks like in action. Starting with the dev infrastructure, platform engineers curate environment templates and map projects to Azure subscriptions, identities, and permissions based on their environment type. From there, dev teams then assign their developers the templates they need to work on projects. Developers can then deploy those environments on demand through a dev portal or the CLI, or they can deploy them automatically through their CI/CD pipeline. Regardless of how the environment is deployed, the resources are automatically routed to the relevant Azure subscription, whether that's a test, development, or production subscription. Now I'm going to have Shane Boyer join me on stage to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. Shane?
All right. All right, good morning. All right, so in our first demo, we showcased the power of dev boxes, and developers can quickly start using those pre-configured machines in the cloud equipped with essential tools like Visual Studio. In the same way that dev boxes provide that pre-configured development machine, deployment environments provide that complete set of infrastructure necessary to run that application workload. And just like dev boxes, deployment environments can be self-served through the developer portal, and they can even be created via the command line and used for your pipelines. Using deployment environment, devs don't have to learn all the ins and outs of Azure and potentially creating the wrong resources or over-provisioning infrastructure or even misconfiguring a service, inadvertently creating a security exposure. So here I am in what Mark started with in these dev boxes, and I'm going to go over to the podcast app. And as a platform engineer, when you set up a project, you're really configuring that self-serve capability that enables those developers to build and experiment quickly. So we talked about a little bit about dev pools. So how easy is it to set up one of those boxes for our dev pools? So here, I've got a number here. I'm going to go ahead and create one in our portal. And first off, I'm just going to set up a name, and we'll just call this maybe front end, VS. And we need to make sure that we follow our naming conventions. And then next we have our dev box definition. And now the dev box definition here, it really defines our CPU, RAM, and the base image and size that we're going to have for the box. This would include things like Visual Studio, 256 megs of RAM, things like that. We probably want gigs. And then next we have our network connection, and this is going to define our location where we're at, maybe where our developers are at, our resources, et cetera. And you'll notice that some of these here actually define a VNet. This is sometimes we need access to our local resources on-prem if we're connecting to those. And then we want to look at what's the type of privileges that we want that particular user to have. A standard local user or an administrator. There might be some additional resources that they need to install on the machine, tooling, et cetera, to do their job. And then as Amanda mentioned previously, we want to control those costs and shut down those boxes when they're not in use. So if I'm setting a stop time here, maybe in San Diego, my developers might be in Zurich, I want to shut that down when they're done with their workday so that those machines just aren't spinning in the cloud, costing me money as a platform engineer in my company. And then finally, these machines are automatically enrolled into Intune, and they're managed using the same policy you use for any of the other devices on your network. So we'll cancel all that. All right, next we'll talk about our environment types. And you'll notice I've got a dev, test, and prod environment, and those are assigned to the subscriptions in my particular company here. And up until now, we've talked a lot about giving developers a way to self-serve those development machines. But what about all that infrastructure that the developers need to run that application? As platform engineers, you enable developers to create that infrastructure needed using the deployment environments. Now, a deployment environment type is a definition of the set of Azure resources, and those are specified using infrastructure as code or IAC templates like ARM or Bicep or Terraform. And these templates, they live in a Git-based repository, and they can be added to a project. And this enables our developers to create that infrastructure that they need through the developer portal and through their workflow. I can simply add that. Now, I might have a new front-end team that's coming onto our project, the podcast app, and they're going to be working on the front end. And I want to make sure that their work is assigned to the proper subscription. I obviously have access to a lot of subscriptions here. And I want to make sure that they have the right role when they're doing their work. I might only want them to be a contributor on a specific subscription. And then I can add additional access or tags based on those particular roles. So I can really control their work based on the type of jobs that they're performing.
And the tag kind of allows you to actually track like the project that they're working on as well, right?
Correct, and I can do some queries and things in dashboards and kind of watch the workflow of that work and cost control as well.
Awesome.
All right, so finally, after I've added that, we want to look at our actual environments. We talked a lot about the infrastructure. You showed a very scary map of the infrastructure for the podcast app.
Yeah.
And how do I control that when somebody's doing that work to make sure that everything is spun up for them and they're not doing too many key vaults or too many I don't know, Azure Container Apps. It's going to cost us money. So what we do is we've set this up here for them. And for the podcast project, we've configured a DevOps task to create a new deployment for each branch that creates that isolated collection of infrastructure for that development. If they do a PR, we want to make sure that we run that through a load test and make sure we meeting certain SLAs. And then when that's all done, that gets burned down or taken out of the infrastructure, and it's not costing us extra money.
Awesome. So the developer doesn't really have to think about taking that infrastructure down.
Just have to check in code.
Awesome.
And that enables us to effectively manage our environment and really increases our developer velocity.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Shane. Well, I'm excited to announce, thanks. I'm excited to announce that Microsoft DevBox is ready for you now, and it'll be generally available in July of this summer. And we've already got over 10,000 of our internal engineers at Microsoft using Microsoft DevBox in our team today. And they're loving it because they're able to switch between projects seamlessly and do their jobs efficiently without the operational toil that usually comes with maintaining a machine. And as Shane mentioned, Azure deployment environments deliver consistency and security and great self-service developer experience, and they're generally available now. And best of all, there's no cost to use Azure deployment environments. You just pay for the underlying Azure resources that you use. So go check it out. Now, before we move on, I do want to take a minute to just show you a quick example from General Motors that shows how all this technology is helping their teams take things to the next level.
GM's purpose is to pioneer innovation that moves and connects people to what matters.
We're adding so many different new products and services. The need to be able to get people up to develop quickly is becoming more and more important every day.
We have to make sure they have the right tools, the process, the security.
The Microsoft Developer Cloud to us is that all-in-one solution.
Copilot is something we just rolled out. We have 400 plus GM developers using it.
The developers love it. They put comments in your code, and Copilot provides you with example code in the context of your application. So it really understands your application and what you've been writing.
And it lets us speed up a lot of that boilerplate process. Get you 98% of the way there. That's been a big productivity boost for them.
What DevBox allows you to do that we couldn't do before is really get the developer ready to develop within a day. So all the tools, all the capabilities connected to all the endpoints they need to do their job.
Each DevBox can be configured with a different set of tools. So if you are working on multiple assignments, we have been assigned with multiple DevBoxes.
Azure deployment environment is part of the DevBox portal. We are using the infrastructure as code within the deployment environment. Say, I want an environment to test out once I'm ready. I can do it with Azure deployment environment. I can spin up that environment. Team can come in and test their code, make sure it's all ready before I move to production.
To innovate new capabilities that really connect people to things that matter, you have to be with the partner who thinks with a developer mindset. That makes Developer Cloud a really good choice for us.
I just love that video. I love hearing how Microsoft DevBox and Azure deployment environments are helping the GM team onboard their developers faster, automate their mundane tasks, and scale in a way that has real impact for customers. We've talked about how collaboration between developers and operations teams really leads to faster software delivery. DevOps combines people and processes and technology to deliver continuous value to users. DevSecOps is the evolution of DevOps, where companies adopt security-first mindset by putting security into every phase of the development lifecycle, from design to delivery. DevSecOps is really more important than ever given the prevalence of open source. 99% of enterprises use open source, and 80 to 90% of modern software supply chains are made up of open source. While this gives teams incredible common foundation to build on top of, it also means that they've invited thousands of developers into their code base, but they probably don't really have great visibility into who they've invited and how secure that code is. Quite simply, you really can't have DevOps without the holistic security and peace of mind that comes with DevSecOps. And we're applying that paradigm even further across security and resilience and the overall quality of your customers' experiences. So Shane is going to join me one more time to show you all how we can extend this practice so that we can catch issues earlier in the development life cycle. Shane?
Hi, I'm back. All right.
All right.
Okay, so what we did in the first one, we kind of talked about a little bit of how we set up all of these boxes to make the developer productive.
Yeah.
And now, as a developer, I want to make sure that all of that stuff is set up and has security and my productivity and all of the quality things are set up for us.
Right. So you were wearing like a different shirt a minute ago.
I was a
right?
platform engineer, now I'm a developer.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Changing roles on the team. Okay, so for the podcast app, what we've done is we've actually partnered with a third-party service to customize the category text and description based on a specific user. So by tailoring that content, we're kind of hoping that we can get some more subscribers to our service.
That makes sense.
Okay, so I've got our Visual Studio here, and I'm actually going to look for our little HTTP code that I'm looking for our, here we go. All right, so category client here. And what I've got is this actually will invoke our category client, that third-party service, pretty simple HTTP client. I'm gonna go over to my categories API and uncomment that code that I was testing earlier. Make sure I use the right keyboard. Got a lot of things going on back here. All right. Now that I've got that code in there, I'm just gonna go over to our Git changes, and I'm just gonna say add my category service. And I'm gonna check in that code, and because my platform engineering team set up that CI system for us, it'll scaffold out all of that production system stuff that I need. It replicates there and run our stuff for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and commit my changes and push, and that should do that stuff for us, which is really great. So we'll just wait for that to happen.
Shane, I got you on here in front of thousands of people to do a demo, and there's like a failure.
I'm sorry. Yeah, come to build, do a demo. It'll be awesome. Let me go to my source control. This is not embarrassing. All right.
It looks like the push was rejected because...
Look at that. It says checking for credentials and other secrets. Push was rejected because it contains one or more secrets. I didn't see a secret in there.
I didn't either.
All right, so it says program CS line 25. All right, so let's go back over there. Let's look at line 25. That's wrong scroll wheel. Look at that. So 25.
But it's commented.
It's commented out. So we actually have GitHub, the Azure Security DevOps set up, right? And what it does is it actually scans our code, kind of a pre-flight check, and says, you have a key here. And it's not gonna let us check in. Nobody's ever checked in a key before, right? But I know when I've done it here, I get a ton of emails, I've got to roll back things, I got to figure out how to do all my Git history and thousands of command line things I got to do. So what I can do now is I'm just gonna actually remove that from our code. We'll just delete that. How about that? I'll make sure I save my file.
That should solve it, right?
Fix it.
Easy.
Yeah, fixed. Sorry about that.
No more
Sorry
secret.
About delay. And I'll commit and push that. Cool. Now we should be good, right?
Yep.
Good to go. We're pushing. Sorry for the delay. Okay, so the Azure DevOps Advanced Security is even smart enough to look at our history.
The Git history.
The Git history. So it knows that it's actually back there in the back, and we would commit that, and somebody can actually scaffold our history as well and snag that key and do bad things, right?
Gotcha.
And sniff out our secret. So if we're not stopping these accidental leaks, right, we have a lot of production work we have to roll back, revoking things, it's time, it's money, it's a pain. So we don't want to do that. So luckily, Visual Studio allows us to look at all of our commits. I can see that I got these two here, so what I'm going to do is I will double click both of those, right? And I can just right click. Let's just do a squash. And let's change this to add cat service, something like that. We'll hit squash. Now I can push that. Now everything should be happy, I hope.
Awesome.
Oh,
So it's really cleaned up now.
Well, now
That's
it's
great.
never existed in our history, and I can actually go, I don't want to move icons, but what I want to do is go and look at our pipeline. So these are the pipelines that we've set up, and if I actually refresh this here, We can see now I've got my AdCat service. It's running. It's going to kick off all of that infrastructure scaffolding for us, which is really cool. Now, that's going to take some time, right? So what I want to actually do is I'm thinking that's pretty good. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio, and we'll just create a PR. So I'll click that pull request, and I'll just put in my initials, because that should be good enough for me. I'll create that. Now, what that's going to do, since on our PR branch, we've created enough rules, we've put our rules here so that we want it to run through an actual load test.
Gotcha. So
Right.
basically, like, there's kind of a developer inner loop that does CI and things like that, and then the push to make sure that you don't push something like a secret. But then you even have a further kind of set of tests that you want to run as you get closer to production.
Yeah. So any PRs, we want to make sure that that's going to mirror our actual production environment. So we want to make sure, obviously, we're hitting our quality gates and stuff
Gotcha.
like that. So now that's going to take, again, some time, because there's a lot of infrastructure for us to scaffold, more time we have today, about 15 minutes or so. So what I want to do is, let's go check out one that one of our colleagues done in the past when he was running through some additional tests. So he's got, it looks like on another branch, adding these customizations. And we look at the deployment, and what we're looking here is that actually we're using the Azure Developer CLI, and that scaffolds out everything. He could have done this on the command line with the AZD up, but we're using it also in our pipeline, and it ran that load test. And unfortunately, looks like it failed. So if I zoom in here, looks like we had a quality gate that we wanted a response time of 900 on those calls. We're hitting 21,000, not so great. I'm not a performance person. It's been some time since I've been doing this.
Yeah.
So,
do you want me to, I'm actually kind of familiar with load testing. Do you want me to check
good.
it out?
I think that falls in your
Okay.
group.
So I think if we just look at the load testing that's in progress here, then we should be able to scroll down and see the results. And yep, we can actually see here that this is where the regression
Spike,
happened, and it's in the Get Categories API, right?
That's that code I wrote.
Yep, that was what you were working on. So if we go back to Visual Studio, and we go to the Categories API.
I think it's in a program CS
Yeah,
where we implemented it, right?
Yeah,
I think
so it's
down
39, is that what it was?
We're looking at line 37, I think it was.
Okay.
Yep, right there.
Yeah, there we are. Okay. So this is basically where we had the code that caused the performance regression,
Yeah,
right?
that category client I think needs to be a little bit more resilient. But
So
I'm not-
I don't really know this code base very well,
It's been a minute since I've written that.
but I'm kind of thinking maybe we can actually ask Copilot here.
There's some videos today I saw.
So I'm just going to ask, how can we make category client, category client more resilient?
Yeah, I bet it's not even going to care if we spell anything right.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I spelled something
All right.
wrong there.
Let's see here.
All right, let's see what it says.
Drum roll. Holy
Oh.
smokes, look at all
Wow.
that. So it says to use Poly.
Wow.
Gives us some code here.
Awesome.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So should we just take this and insert it in
Maybe
there?
if we ask, like, can you add Poly to category client for us?
Can you add Poly to category client?
Let's see.
Let's see. This is live code, people.
Holy smokes.
All right, that's awesome. Okay, so let's just go ahead and insert that. And yes,
Where did it insert it?
it inserted it down below. This right here.
Let's
think we don't
let's
need-
copy that.
Okay.
And we'll just paste it on line 30, where were we at? We're at 38
There we
maybe?
are. There we are.
Throw it on 38.
Okay.
See what happens there.
Okay, and then we can just comment out this one.
Yeah, sure. And we'll go ahead and check in those codes,
Go ahead and check it in,
and we'll see if it fails.
and we can just check it out.
Make sure we put a comment in there.
Yep. Fixed Shane's slow code. All right. Give it all.
I might not be
That
back
works?
next year. Cool.
All right. So now we should be able to go back to the load test, right? And
Yeah.
see kind of what kicks off. And if we go back, I'm in the wrong
other
browser.
window?
Other window. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. If we go back to the pipelines, do we want to go to
That
this-
first one, and we
this
can see it
first one,
kicking
and
it
we can
off if
see
we
it
refresh, I
actually
think.
refreshing. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a
So
new
now we can
load
actually
run.
see- It's running again.
It's going to, PR automated for 102. It's probably going to running through some additional runs.
Awesome.
And we can look at Mark's previous run,
Yeah, we can look at this one to see a passing load test. And we can go ahead and click on the load test just to see kind of what that looks like.
That was one that got skipped, but I think if we look at this other tab.
This one here.
Yeah,
there we go.
cool.
There we go.
Load test.
We can go to the load test, and then we can see here we are, load test right there. And if we scroll down, we can actually see that this is an example that passed. So it's really easy to basically just kind of use load testing in your CI/CD pipeline so that you can actually make sure that you have all of both the quality and security checks that we had in this demo.
And when it's all done and that PR gets merged, all the infrastructure that got spun up goes away. I don't have to, as a developer, have to worry about clicking things in a portal and trying to figure out what I'm not supposed to touch.
Just yet another headache that you don't have to think about so you can focus on writing code.
That's right.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, Shane. Cool. So Shane's demo highlighted secret scanning, but GitHub Advanced Security for Azure DevOps also offers code scanning and dependency analysis so that you can detect and remediate the most common kinds of code security issues. GitHub Advanced Security for Azure DevOps is available as a public preview starting today. And Azure Load Testing, which we made generally available earlier this year, it really helps you ensure quality at scale. And it works with both Azure pipelines and GitHub Actions. And for those of you who are familiar with load testing already, you can upload your existing Apache JMeter scripts, which makes it really easy to get started. So we've talked a lot about how we're improving your individual developer experience and how we're accelerating your team's velocity. We've also talked about how this leads to happier developers who are more satisfied with their work, and that's because when we cut down on developer toil and improve efficiency across teams, we free up more time to create and innovate. Satya, Kevin, and Scott all talked about some truly mind-blowing AI-enabled apps, and while it might seem complicated at first glance, I really want you all to know just how easy it is to make any app an intelligent app. In fact, if you've got an API, you're already ready to go. The application that we showed in that last demo has a set of public APIs behind it. The podcast API is the main API that feeds the website and the app's data. And it also takes requests for new podcast submissions from users. Instead of processing the podcasts on the main API, it adds an item into a queue for the ingestion worker to handle. The ingestion worker is a background worker service that just listens to this feed submission queue, and it analyzes all of the submissions to see if they're valid and what category they should be in. And then it inserts it appropriately if it's valid, or it fires off other webhooks to notify other clients. The podcast updater API is really the simplest of all of the services. It's the background worker service that updates the podcast's feed from the internet, and it updates the database with all of this information. So let's take one of those APIs and build an intelligent app. I'm going to hand it over to Isidore Nikolic, who's going to show you just how easy it is to integrate this into your intelligent ecosystem.
Thank you, Amanda.
Hey, Izzy,
it's
welcome.
great to be here. Thank you, thank you. So what we have here is the Open API docs page of our podcast API that you just talked about. And we have multiple endpoints listed here, and one of the endpoints is the shows endpoint. And we can go ahead, we can just try it out. And it gives us the list of our tech podcasts.
Right, right, exactly.
And Amanda, how awesome would it be if we surface this data directly from ChatGPT?
That would be amazing.
It would be pretty awesome, right? So let's go ahead, let's do that. For that, we need the ChatGPT plugin. And luckily, ChatGPT plugins are nothing more than web APIs.
It sounds kind of intimidating, but when you say it's just a web API, that sounds a lot simpler.
Yeah, it's just a web API, and that's exactly what I have here. I have here a TypeScript Express web API that is talking to our podcast app, which is running on Azure. But instead of us explaining it, let's go ahead, let's ask Copilot to explain this app to us. Cool. Thank you, Copilot. And one of the things which Copilot nicely noticed is that we're using the Open API specification. This is just a standard way to document our endpoints. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that. Here we see our endpoints documented, and one of the endpoints is the shows endpoint. It just returns a list of shows. But let's go back to our index.ts. And you can see, Amanda, I was trying to use the nice async await pattern everywhere, but how silly of me, I missed one spot. So I'm using the outdated promises then here.
Yeah, that's kind of old school TypeScript right there.
Yeah, but let's not refactor this live. Let's ask Copilot to help with this, right?
Sure.
And in VS Code, we want to bring AI at your fingertips. And that's why we're looking at experimenting with combining the VS Code Quick Open and GitHub Copilot. And this is how that experience looks like. Let's just go ahead and let's ask Copilot to rewrite this to use async await.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Copilot. So let's just go ahead. Let's just take this. This is picture perfect. And now all my methods are using the same async await everywhere. We didn't have to do anything, right? But let's go back to making this a ChatGPT plugin, actually. So the only thing which is missing is our AI plugin.json file. Let's go ahead. Let's paste that in. And this file, this is just a manifest file for ChatGPT that ChatGPT will use to determine when and how to use our plugin. For example, it will use this description for a model to determine when to use our plugin. Let's go ahead and let's run this. Luckily, we're in a code space, so it just works. And we get the publicly accessible endpoint, which is exactly what we need in order to go to ChatGPT and register our plugin. So let's go to ChatGPT and let's register our plugin. So this plugin is not deployed yet anywhere. We're just using the endpoint that the code space is providing us. And let's go ahead and let's install it. ChatGPT will verify our manifest, and it's installed.
Super easy.
Super easy, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, we should be polite, so we should say, hi, ChatGPT. That's the first thing, how you start this. And just so we see that for queries like this, they will not be forwarded to our plugin.
Right.
Right?
You want to see that kind of like ChatGPT is working on its own.
Yeah, as usual. It's polite as usual. So let's actually ask something which is related to our tech podcasts. Let's ask ChatGPT to list the names of our tech podcasts in plain text. Let's see. It seems like we got an issue, but
well, it looked like it found your plugin there.
Yeah, it found our plugin. Let's try one more time.
Did you write that error string, or it just kind of failed and it wrote that error string for you?
So it seems like we're getting an issue here. Let's see what's going on. For some reason, let's try it one more time. So ChatGPT nicely classifies this plugin, but for some reason, it seems like we're hitting an issue. Let's try it one more time. And then we have another account that we can try. So our port is public. Let's try with another account just to be.
This is all live code.
This is all live code, yes. And my friend Joe Binder gave me another account that we can now go into. We will again use ChatGPT. We will go again to install our plugin. And now we cannot find the manifest file. Let's make sure that we start this code space one more time. Let's ask ChatGPT to search for our manifest. And it found our manifest. That's great. Let's go ahead. Let's install our plugin. And let's try again to ask ChatGPT to list the names of my tech podcasts in plain text. ChatGPT will classify this query, and it will then use our plugin in order to answer this. Let's see if this will work now. So it's pinging our,
awesome.
Awesome. Here are the names coming right in.
Those are a lot of the podcasts that I listen to.
Thank you, thank you. Those are great podcasts, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. We just pinged one API endpoint. Let's ask something more complex.
Sure.
I know we both love the Hansel Minutes from Scott Hanselman.
Yeah, it's classic.
Right, it's a classic one. So let's go ahead and let's ask to summarize the latest episode of the Hansel Minutes podcast in a style of a tweet, live from Build. We're live at Build. Oh, seems like we got an issue. But the cool feature of ChatGPT is that we can expand each of these requests. We can see what error we got, and we can see what endpoint ChatGPT was hitting. We see it's the get show by ID endpoint. So let's just put a breakpoint right there, and let's debug it straight from ChatGPT. So I just went here, and let's now regenerate this response. We saw that the error was that the response was too large. We have to be mindful of limitations of prompts for large language models. It might be that we are returning too large of a response. And we see that we beautifully hit the breakpoint. We see it in the tab.
Nice.
So now we're debugging straight from ChatGPT. Isn't this awesome?
Yeah, it's great.
Right?
Great.
So let's see what's going on here, actually. OK, so we see the author is Scott Hanselman, as expected. Whoa. And it looks like Scott Hanselman loves his podcasts. There's 800 episodes of the podcast, which is great for you and me as listeners.
He is prolific.
Right? But it gives too large of a response.
Yeah.
So let's just return the latest 20 episodes if the request is coming from ChatGPT. But I never know if I should use array splice or slice when I'm working. It's just confusing. Let's ask Copilot to help here. So let's go ahead and let's ask Copilot if ChatGPT is making this request, send only the first 20 episodes. Awesome. Looks great, right? And the nice thing about this inline experience is that I'm still in control. I'm still the pilot. I can review this, and I can edit this as I think is best. We still have the great debugging support of VS Code. So let's just debug this right here. So we can see that the user agent has ChatGPT, but is not equal to ChatGPT. So let's just change this live. So I get the great VS Code IntelliSense, as I would expect here. And now this looks pretty good. Let's just go ahead. Let's accept this. That's great. Let's run our app one more time to make sure that the changes are applied. Great. And let's go back to ChatGPT. So now we expect that ChatGPT will do orchestration, which is the magic, which is combining multiple API endpoints in order to get the response. The first response will return 20 podcast episodes. ChatGPT will figure out what is the latest episode. From the latest episodes, it will ping our summarization endpoint and will then transform that in a style of a tweet, live from Build.
That's awesome.
Here we are, right?
That's great. So it's basically, it's combining the power of your application with the power of the foundational LLM model from OpenAI to actually create new content that actually gets your podcast app more users.
Absolutely.
That's really incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. So with VS Code and code spaces, you have everything you need for a smooth inner development loop of a ChatGPT plugin.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
All right. Thanks, Izzy. At the beginning of this session, I mentioned that it was my personal mission to really unleash dev creativity. So now you've seen just how easy it is to take an everyday app and turn it into an intelligent app. And so I'd really encourage all of you to think about your own public APIs and put your brain power behind turning them into something incredible. Check out the sample code at that aka.ms link so that you can get started on this yourself. Now, we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about how GitHub Copilot chat in Visual Studio and VS Code can save you time and reduce toil, and how Microsoft DevBox is improving dev team velocity by making it easier to collaborate with consistency and quality in a hybrid-first world, and how Azure deployment environments and GitHub Advanced Security for Azure DevOps are empowering devs and dev infra teams alike. And of course, how truly easy it is to make any app an intelligent app. As developers, you're tasked with building the apps and the services and infrastructure that really moves our world forward. And we believe that these innovations will help you and your teams move forward too. Our vision has always been to empower you to set up a complete engineering system in seconds, contribute from any device, build from any platform, collaborate with anybody, and scale with confidence. And now we're living in a world where that vision is a reality. Thank you so much for being here today, and happy coding.
And that was Amanda Silver and friends, bringing us the latest from that all-important Dev Toolbox. We'll catch up with her in just a few moments, but first, make sure to follow all the action over on Twitter using the hashtag MSBuild. That feed has been busy today, so keep the conversation going throughout the event and across the globe. We want to see your pictures. Microsoft Build has something for everyone, and our lineup does too. For the cloud dev, we've got a chat with OpenAI coming up soon. Java developers, we've got the latest insights and best practices from Azure, including how today's Copilot news means developing code faster. Plus, Scott Hanselman, one of my favorite people, joins us live to give us his take on the news of the day. Always great to have Scott, and if you're not sure what I mean, stay tuned. It's a party. Let's keep that party going with a check-in backstage. Christina, over to you.
Thank you so much, Caruana. All right, I'm joined right now by Amanda Silver, who just is hot off the stage, giving your keynote. Some amazing things there. So one of the things that I really loved was seeing the experience of like the Microsoft DevBox and the Azure deployment environments like together. Can you talk to me a little bit about like how big of a deal do you think this is for like hybrid work teams?
Well, I think it's a huge deal. I mean, you know, in a sense, kind of what we're trying to do is to actually bring the incredible developer infrastructure that we have for our own internal Microsoft engineers and actually make that available to every dev team throughout the world. And so we're taking all of our best practices and making it so that everybody can basically have the best developer experience.
I love that so much, and I love what you just said there, you know, like making everybody have the best developer experience and taking the things that we've learned from all the work that we do. I really love that. One of the things I also loved was seeing both Visual Studio and my personal favorite, Visual Studio Code on stage. What are some of the things that you showed today that like any developer, you know, regardless of what programming language they're in, like what are some of the things that they can take advantage of?
Well, first of all, I mean, GitHub Copilot obviously works for every programming language that you might use, and it's pretty incredible. And even if you're actually, let's say you're a C# developer and you're new to Python, it can actually help you translate that kind of code, or vice versa. So that's definitely one thing I would say. The other thing is, you know, we showed how you can just take any public API and create an intelligent app with, you know, integrating into ChatGPT, and based on the earlier keynotes, how you'll be able to take that to Bing Chat and to other chat clients as well. So it's that plug-in experience so that you can build an intelligent application is definitely another thing that I think every developer can take away from this.
No, totally, and I love that because, like you said, you can use it not just, you know, what like the fact that it's using this open standard, it's being able to go multiple places. So your intelligent apps have a lot more flexibility, which is really great. For developers who are, you know, excited about this stuff, but you know they haven't gotten started with what you showed, like where should they go? Like what's the one thing you would tell them? Like what should they do if they see all this stuff, they love what it's representing, but they don't know where to start? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I'd say just go get GitHub Copilot and sign up for the Copilot Chat preview, because Copilot Chat is not available to everybody just yet. So that's number one. The second thing is always get the latest version of Visual Studio or VS Code. Those are actually going to make it your Copilot experience even better. Yes. Right? Because essentially a lot of what we do is prompt engineering in those applications so that we're taking the context of the code that you're writing and providing that into the AI so that we can actually make the AI have an enhanced experience that's more contextual and more accurate for your coding experience. And then last, like I think there's a ton of resources and links that we had in the PowerPoint. So go back over the PowerPoint, go back over the session, and go check out all of the sample code and all of the new releases that we talked about.
I love it. I love it. So as Amanda said, get the latest versions of Visual Studio Code, sign up for GitHub Copilot Chat, and check out our resources. Thank you so much, Amanda. Great job on the keynote. Back to you, Caruana.
Thanks, Christina. Later, Christina will also meet up with GitHub's Vice President, Martin Woodward, to learn how GitHub is using cloud technologies and artificial intelligence to make coding more accessible. You can find all of our interviews in the session catalog after the show. My next guest is here to talk about something near and dear to my heart, and that is community, specifically the open source community organizations, bringing devs together from around the world. Their work is pivotal. Their reputation precedes them. Ava, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Caruana.
I have been a fan of the work that you've done, following through, you know, the insights that you've really shared through the open source community around Code of conduct. There's just deep stuff there, of course, which I'm super interested in, but I think everybody needs to be. Talk a little bit more about the open source community and the importance of protecting that as an engine of innovation.
Yeah, so open source has been around for a long time, more than 25 years, built on the free software movement before that. But it's different than your sort of normal corporate environment. It's a community of people who show up because they're interested or their friends are there, and they volunteer their time, their labor, their ideas to build something more cool together. But because of that, you need it to be a welcoming space. And our demographics are changing.
Right, they are, absolutely. And, you know, I think people don't often understand how much volunteer time and goodwill leads to important innovations. I mean, certainly we say that in all of the communities, but probably the most in the open source community. You know, there's importance of contribution and connection. Why do you think that the relationships built in that community are so pivotal?
I mean, I have friends that I've known for 20 years. I've gone to their wedding, I've seen their kids grow up, they've seen me go through all, you know, job changes, life changes, so many adventures. These are folks that I end up sitting on a rooftop in a strange city in a different continent with multiple times over the past 10 years, 20 years. We worked together. That's friendship.
Yes.
We changed jobs. We still have that relationship, and I want to see them succeed too.
Absolutely, and really being invested in the success of others. For me, is a hallmark of any community, certainly in open source. But really, I mean, how do you explain open source to organizations and individuals who aren't familiar with it?
So to a business, the value is you have something to start from. Whatever product you're building, whatever service you're building, you can start with tools somebody else built that are like 90% of what you need. You modify them, maybe you fix some bugs, maybe build something on top. But like everything on GitHub, so much these days, from our Linux operating system that goes back to the 90s, to most of the stack in a smart light bulb or a smart fridge, everything is built on open source. The Mars rover had open source in it. Open source helped discover the Higgs boson. It's everywhere.
It really is everywhere. But do you have to be just a developer? Is that all that the open source community is about, just developers partnering together?
Absolutely not. It takes a village, as they say. And so open source software and projects and communities also need moderation. They also need folks writing documentation, building cool art. Communicating the idea on stage, coming up with little logos for a project, mascots that we can all connect to. These are also important parts of community building.
Absolutely. And you can really represent your authentic self, your authentic interests. It is a welcoming place, but it's also a welcoming place based on the behavior of everyone there, right?
Well, it needs to be a welcoming place, in my opinion, right?
Yes.
But that takes effort. Communities don't just magically become great, wonderful, happy spaces for everyone. We're human. We bump into each other. We step on a toe by accident. And sometimes people need a little bit of assistance recovering a social relationship. And so that's where community moderation, codes of conduct can help.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm going to continue following your compelling and important work. It's really fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, if you would like to check out more, head to inclusive-naming.org. Thanks, Ava, again. We'll be right back with more. Stay tuned.
When you're sharing sensitive data with other organizations, you're probably concerned about privacy and security. The team at Intel is helping customers collaborate on AI projects. Do just that. Everywhere from operating tables to the offices of NASA. Please welcome Mansi Sharma, Intel's deep learning software engineer. How you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks, Seth.
Fantastic. So let's talk about open federated learning. I've heard the term. Can you help us understand what it is?
OpenFL, or Open Federated Learning, is an open source framework for training AI models at edge. It helps institutions to collaborate without sharing any sensitive information like patient data, financial records, or classified secrets. This way, the data remains local, while the models can get more accurate and can generalize well by getting access to diversely annotated data sets.
And that's awesome, because there's a ton of good data out there that needs to remain private. How are you seeing folks use this in action?
Yeah, so Intel and University of Pennsylvania have jointly completed the world's largest healthcare federation study that leveraged OpenFL. So we studied MRI scans from 6,000 patients at 71 locations across 6 different continents to study malignant brain tumor cells. Using this unprecedented data set across the globe, we have been able to demonstrate an improvement in brain tumor detection by 33%. So this emphasizes that not just the volume of the data, but also the diversity is so important for AI models to generalize well.
So it's literally saving lives, is what I'm hearing.
It looks that way. It's also being used by NASA's Frontier Development Lab to study the effects of radiation on astronauts. Since the data is private and the cost of transmitting data that could be generated aboard a spacecraft is high, OpenFL comes into rescue to train ensemble ML models.
So this is cool. I want people to understand this, because I know when we talk about machine learning works by getting data into the models, but there's a privacy issue with certain kinds of data. So what does it look like when you're training OpenFL models, but the data stays local? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think the data still remains local while the model moves to the data. And then what happens is that the models, the data, it gets trained on top of the models, and only the model updates get transferred back to a central location called the aggregator, and then they're sent back again.
I see. So that way, the data always literally stays local. Because I always thought there was some kind of like a little bit of data was sent, but the model is what moves and not the data, and that's what makes it a little bit safer. Is that right?
Right, that's right.
So as we're looking at this technology future-wise, what are some of the things we need to look forward to when it comes to this?
Yeah, so although incubated at Intel with UPenn's collaboration, OpenFL is a truly open source, community-driven project. And in alignment with those core values, we have recently moved to the Linux Foundation AI and data space to increase developer outreach and grow the federated learning community. Security and privacy have always been at our core, either through the use of technologies like Intel SGX, or coupled with Grameen, or to the use of privacy-preserving machine learning algorithms. And we are very excited to announce that we will be soon launching an additional security add-on repository for security called OpenFL Security 1.0 that leverages Intel SGX and Microsoft CCF. So when it's up, participants would be able to run applications inside hardened enclaves, and that could be attested, using remote attestation.
I mean, this is cool. We got about 30 seconds. Like, if developers are watching this and they're hearing OpenFL, is it like a library or a series of techniques, or what is it?
So it's just a framework that you could use. You can literally plug in any model, any data, and just have the framework up and running.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. For more information about how Microsoft and Intel are collaborating on OpenFL, visit the Intel Featured Partner Directory. I'm a huge fan of machine learning. OpenFL is going to make it accessible to everyone and data. Thank you so much. Now we're to Christina.
Thanks, Seth. I'm now joined by Mark Heckler. All right, so Microsoft Build, I gotta say, you're a Java developer.
Yes.
We think of Microsoft Build, we think C#, we think .NET, we might think TypeScript. Java, maybe not as much. So I'm kidding, of course. But we are all about developers. But tell me about some of the opportunities and the options that Java developers have, at Azure, and some of the stuff that they can take advantage of that we've talked about at Build so far.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Microsoft really wants to be the destination of choice for all languages, and Java is certainly no exception. In fact, Java dominates the enterprise in many ways.
Yeah.
So a lot of different formats and options, libraries that surround the Java ecosystem, and we want to support all of them and support them the best that we possibly can. So there are a lot of options that Java developers have available within Azure, and a lot of great options.
Awesome. And you actually, we were talking about some stuff earlier, like you're actually building some of your own resources and guides to help Java devs get the most out of Azure right now too. So can you tell us a little bit about like what you have planned, what people can look forward to?
Yeah, it's, again, we just have an embarrassment of riches in terms of the ecosystem here within the Azure, the larger Azure platform.
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing is creating a variety of different microservices or services that work together to accomplish a mission, right? So you have things like functions built using Java and container applications and services that are running using things like Azure Spring Apps to fully integrate and externalize configuration and do all the things that we would expect out of a fully supportive cloud-native environment for Java devs.
That's awesome. And can you talk to me a little bit about what are some of those scenarios that you see most often, like when you talk to developers in the community? Like what are the scenarios that they're building on the cloud right now?
I mean, there are so many, but ultimately it comes down to a lot of different things. I mean, data is where we all live, right? And you see that more and more with all of the AI announcements, because if you have sufficient data, good quality data, you can do very good things. And if you don't have that, you can't do a lot, even with the best of intentions and efforts. So you have a lot of integration points, you have streams, you have ways of transferring data back and forth, manipulating and massaging that data and processing it. Ultimately, I hate to oversimplify it, but it's kind of getting the right information to the right place at the right time. And that's kind of how all of this integrates. And that's the scenario that I'm building. And of course, using Copilot to help do that and accomplish that in the best, fastest way possible.
Okay, you mentioned Copilot. So I do, as the resident as the resident GitHub person here at Microsoft Build, I do have to ask you a little bit about GitHub Copilot and some of the other Copilots we've used. What has your experience been using GitHub Copilot as a Java developer?
It's been great, and I kind of have a little bit of a different perspective on this
I'd love to
because
hear it.
I am a licensed pilot, so I always kind of tie the two domains together. They're both very technical domains, but you can accomplish such great things. And I often kind of think about, in terms of aviation, and that you have certain aircraft that are rated for single pilot operations and other aircraft that are rated for multi-pilot, or you have to have two people on the flight deck. So as developers, many times we've kind of found ourselves in overly complex situations where we're kind of operating that two-person aircraft for a two-person flight crew, and we're doing it solo. So Copilot is really our co-pilot. It doesn't do things for us, it does things with us, and it helps facilitate us, help with the workload, help with the rigor and the quality and the speed with which we can produce what we need to produce. So I'm using Copilot with VS Code to develop software, to write tests. So it helps kind of assist with the coding. It helps maybe make my coding a little better.
Yeah.
I mean, hard to believe, right? Make more rigorous tests and better tests. So it just helps me accomplish more faster in a better way.
No, I love hearing that. And I think you touched on something really important, which is that it's not doing it for you, it's assisting you, it's helping you. Like the name Copilot is really instructive in that way, right?
I think it's a superb name because it captures things so well in one short word. So yes.
All right, so where can people go to learn more about all the things Java on Azure and beyond?
There are so many places, but we'll start with the kind of the jumping off point, which is aka.ms/java-azure. And that kind of gets you, it opens the door to everything else. So that's a great place to start.
All right, you got that right. It's aka.ms/java-azure. And Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Throughout the show, we will be introducing you to content creators who are here to give you some pro tips on what they know best. Check out what our first creator has to say.
Hi, this is Eden from Lemon Nerdy, and I'm going to share 3 things to keep in mind if you want to become a content creator. I've been a YouTuber and content creator for 5 years and worked on influencer campaigns for 9 years. Keeping these 3 things at the front of my mind has been super helpful to me. Number 1, choose a topic or topics that you're passionate about and can talk about non-stop, even to an empty room. When you're just starting out, that may be the case. So make sure you really love what you're creating and sharing. Your excitement will make people excited to join your community and share your content. Number 2, get to know your audience. Research what people who consume your content like and don't like. Knowing this will help you create content that will educate, inspire, and entertain your audience to help you build an engaged community. Number 3, make sure that your tools make content creating easier and faster. When you want to get your ideas out there, You want tools to make recording, captioning, editing, going live, and collaborating with other creators easy and fun. Here's a bonus tip. If you have a sense of dread instead of a sense of excitement when it's time to create, something is wrong. Ask yourself, do I love what I'm talking about? Do I understand my audience, and do they engage with me in a positive way? Are my tools easy to use and functional so that they don't get in the way of the joy I should be getting from creating? If the answer to any of these questions is no, revisit my 3 tips and reset. Take care and keep creating.
Joining me now is the man with all the data. Please welcome Corporate Vice President of Azure Data, Arun Ulag. All right, Arun, thank you so much for joining me. All right, so both Satya and Scott mentioned Microsoft Fabric today. So first of all, congratulations on that. And can you tell us a little bit more about this? Like, what is Microsoft Fabric?
Yeah, it's really excited to be here. It's literally the biggest thing that we've done in data. Satya called it since SQL, which is a real big deal.
I was going to say, like, that is a massive statement.
Yeah, it is a massive statement coming directly from the CEO himself.
Absolutely.
But really, it is a unified analytics platform that lets you go from data to intelligence in the hands of your business users very, very quickly. It provides 4 things. One is it gives you all of the capabilities you're looking for to go from data to intelligence for data scientists, data engineers, data warehousing people, BI professionals, etc. The second is it's completely open, so it's lake-centric and open.
Nice.
We introduced something called OneLake. Customers are super excited about it. It's a single unified SaaS data lake for the entire organization, like OneDrive for your data.
Amazing.
The third is that any data that's in Fabric automatically is plugged into all of Office. So it's built into Excel, it's built into Teams, it's built into PowerPoint, it's built into SharePoint. So the data comes to where the business users are today. And finally, the most exciting piece are the Copilot integrations. Copilot is built into every part of the Fabric experience, helping developers really get insights out of data, but really accelerating productivity. So that's what Fabric's about.
No, I really, really love that. I mean, those are so exciting, especially with that last bit about having this, one centralized platform and then being able to do all those additional things with it through plugins. Now, in your session later today, what are you going to show us? And can you give us a little tease? Like, what are you going to show us, and what are you most excited about showing us?
Tons and tons of demos. Tons and tons of demos, right? So developers are going to have a fantastic time. But perhaps the best part of the demo are really going to be about OneLake, right? Really bringing all of the enterprise data together in a single unified way, bringing data even from AWS S3 and not just Azure Data Lake.
See, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really the first multi-cloud SaaS data lake. So super excited about that. Super excited about Power BI's Copilot integration. Scott showed the demo.
Yep.
People call that demo the mic drop moment. People see that demo, they're like, oh my God, this is the future of BI. So there'll be tons and tons of exciting demos. These are the 2 that are my favorites.
Okay, I'm excited about both of those, and I do kind of want to ask you. A ton of work has been going into this, but can you talk to me a little bit about some of the engineering work that went into creating this platform? Because this is, as Satya said, the biggest thing since SQL. So can you talk a little bit about that?
First of all, we're so happy that we can finally talk about it because we've been working in secret for 2 years now.
Wow.
But literally 2 years ago, it started with a set of Figmas. Literally, Figmas is all we had.
So we'll go from Figmas to product in 2 years.
In 2 years, but we had a strong base to start from.
Okay.
We had a full portfolio of analytics products.
Right.
But each of them were individual. Now it's actually one integrated product. Things just flow. Therefore, Fabric.
I love that. Things just flow, therefore, Fabric. No, I love it. I was going to ask, are we going to have a Microsoft Loom? Is that going to be a product name or something to help weave
The Loom
things?
is building 44. I'm kidding, but that's it's exciting because there's folks working on it from around the world, So US, China, India, Israel, UK, Poland, Taiwan, you name it. The engineering team is all over the world, so it's exciting.
I love it. I love it. All right, so where can our audience go to see what else is coming up here, both at Microsoft Build and beyond, related to Microsoft Fabric?
So there's a session today at Build. It's at 4 p.m. Pacific time, so everybody should attend that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yes. There's also an online session. It's called aka.ms/buildwithanalytics. It's 2 half days starting tomorrow that goes deep into every aspect of Fabric. And by the way, Fabric is available for public preview today. So anybody can sign up. It just takes a few seconds. There's a free trial for 60 days. No credit card required, no Azure subscription required.
I love it. All right, aka.ms/build Fabric.
Build with analytics.
Build with analytics. Sorry,
yes.
Build with analytics.
Yes.
And check out your session today at 4 o'clock Pacific time. Arun, thank you so much. This is fantastic. Now we're going to head it back over to Caruana.
Thanks, Christina and Arun. Excited for your session coming up later today, for sure. I'm just excited about Microsoft Fabric in general. So recently, I caught up with Executive Vice President Jean-Philippe Couture. He also is the president of the National Transformation Partnership Group and has made it his mission to find inspiring stories of digital transformations across the globe. Check it out.
Jean-Philippe, can you tell me what Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact is all about? It sounds so interesting.
Yes, so Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact Initiative is a global program that is unleashing social innovation coming from almost 900 change makers in the world, coming from 64 countries. And those companies are either social entrepreneurs or impact tech startups. And what we do, we bring them three main benefits. One is really about out-innovating with Microsoft technology. Two is all about coaching them and enabling them to get most of the Microsoft ecosystem. And the third value we bring to the table is all about go-to-market so that their solution can be brought to our customers globally.
That sounds fascinating. You know, I know that there's so much that businesses can learn from these change makers, but I'm really interested to know, what are you learning from them? What are you passionate about in this space as you work with these folks?
As I work and spend time coaching, supporting many of those positive impact entrepreneurs, I've been learning really three main things. One, they are mission-led companies. It's all about their purpose and the way it aligns with one of the 17 UN SDG goals and the way they make a difference in the world. The second thing is they are building profitable solutions for the biggest problems in the world, whether it is climate change, racial justice, corruption, and more. They are building the solutions. And three, it's about driving a systemic change. So truly rallying all the parties, stakeholders involved to make, at the end of the day, a positive change in the world, either in terms of policies, products, new solutions, to get us to the 2030 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals agenda.
How can technology accelerate this positive social impact that you're seeing throughout these organizations, beyond AI, but also including AI?
You know, I've been 40 years in technology, and it's obvious to say that we are entering a new era of incredible innovation of generative AI. And what you can do with that when you're building technologies for good is amazing. One example is Submittable, a social impact platform using semantic kernel and GPT chat to make unstructured discussion a lot more effective for grants programs. A second example would be EcoVadis. This is one of the leading ESG ratings companies in the world, and we've been enabling them to do this huge data mining AI insights of ESG data through the Microsoft Cloud and AI stack. So that's what technology can do, is enable companies to address their ESG needs by using those positive impact entrepreneurial solutions.
Initiatives like this are one of the reasons I'm so proud to work at Microsoft, and I'm very happy to see you leading it. I know there's a large team of people who are helping you along the way, but it's exciting work. So thank you for sharing it with us, Jean-Philippe.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Chapman from Microsoft Mechanics. I'm here today with Mary David Pash. So are you curious about how Microsoft 365 Copilot works as you develop or might leverage some of the concepts into your own apps? Well, first, for anyone who's new to this, why don't we start by explaining what Microsoft 365 Copilot is and what it does?
Yeah, Copilot is three things. It integrates large language models with your data in the Microsoft 365 and combines it and surfaces it in all the apps you work in.
And you're working on the business chat team, right? So why don't you explain like how that process works?
Yeah, so imagine that I'm in Teams, I'm user cat, and I want to get caught up on things that happened yesterday with Fabricam. Based on what I type in business chat, it'll search for all the information that I might want to know about. So I'll see the email that Mona sent that's urgent, documents that have been updated that I should be paying attention to, and even that the final contract was sent for review. If I want to see where all of these things came from, I can click the references and expand it to see exactly where it's getting that content.
Right, importantly, these are all things that you have access to then as the user who's interacting with Copilot, right?
Absolutely. So Copilot doesn't have to get information back. How does that work? It powers, basically the large language model is combined with the Microsoft 365 Copilot orchestration engine. You ask a question in any of the apps, and Copilot will actually use Microsoft Search to get the content that you need to answer your question. It sends that information in the prompt, and now the large language model has enough information to generate an informed response. The real power here that I should call out is that this is all built on top of the Microsoft Graph. So as you saw earlier today in the keynote, this means that you as a developer will have ways to actually surface your content in Copilot experiences.
Very cool. So this is basically an API that you can call to be able to do the search and also put content into your files. So how do we make sure, though, that the responses are always consistent in terms of meeting people's expectations?
Yes, this is where the default or system prompt comes into play. Microsoft 365 has a default prompt which gives the Copilot rules for interaction. This is things like it should be professional for tone, where it can search, so using the Microsoft Graph to actually search for content, things like citing its sources so that you know exactly where that content is coming from, and of course, maybe most importantly, responsible rules for how not to surface any harmful content.
Right, so walk me through the process then, starting with kind of that default or system prompt, how a turn would work then with Microsoft 365 Copilot.
Sure. So you start with a question that you give to Copilot, and it'll append your question with that system prompt, along with any other additional information that's coming from Microsoft Graph.
Right.
All of that information forms one long prompt that you can send to the LLM, which now can generate the output that you'll see.
And that's really an important concept, because what the LLM sees effectively and what you see as the user can be a little bit different. So what do we do then with this information in terms of the history from the prompts and the responses after the conversation's over?
Yeah, so as you're asking questions and Copilot is responding, all of this gets appended into the conversation history that gets passed with each subsequent prompt. And that's how Copilot is able to have a conversation that you can build on. When you're done with that conversation, you can just sweep it away, start a brand new conversation from scratch. And that previous conversation isn't retained by the LLM, nor is it used to actually train the LLM.
Right, amazing stuff. So thanks so much for joining us today, Mary. Hopefully this quick view into the mechanics of Microsoft 365 Copilot helps, and we hope it gives you some ideas in terms of incorporating these concepts into your own future apps. And you can even go deeper after build by checking out aka.ms/m365 Copilot Mechanics.
Our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. As a part of our mission, Microsoft's Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact has aligned its efforts with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals and is built on our key impact pillars. Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact is supporting entrepreneurs working to solve our world's most pressing challenges. Here is their story.
So we're flying above Lake Powell, and this body of water is the second largest man-made reservoir in the United States that has dropped to historic lows, nearly 200 feet below its full capacity. What we're seeing is the result of a drought 1,200 years in the making.
We're facing a global water crisis. That's affecting the generational capacity of Glen Canyon Dam, which generates power for almost 6 million people. This is an emergency situation. What we see now that's decided in the Colorado River Basin will be deciding water allocations for years, if not generations. I'm J. Carl Ganter, and I am CEO and founder of a company called Vector Center, where we're providing real-time course correction using live data and perception and reality around global water challenges. The world needs a new navigation system to understand these grand challenges, and that's why we're partnered with Microsoft to really define or design water's future. We need the best technologies, we need the best of innovations, we need to use data, we need to use the latest in artificial intelligence to measure perception and compare that to reality, and then deliver a dashboard system that provides real-time insights so that we can course correct, because the solutions that we find here in the Colorado River Basin may apply in India, may apply in the Middle East, but we have to do it faster. How we manage our water will define how we grow our food. It will define how we generate our energy. It will also define our cultures and our civilizations and our economic and social stability.
It's time to profile another of our Microsoft most valuable professionals. This time we're introducing you to an MVP named Tomas.
Hi, I'm Umayma Taluka, and I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. Today, I'm really excited to be interviewing MVPs at Microsoft Build. I have Thomas with me, who's been an MVP since 2009, and he's from the Czech Republic. Can you